Man. All right, you guys should be able to hear me. Get us started here in a minute. All right. Check a few things. Probably turn our ticker back on. Transition that over. Yeah, you guys should be able to see me. Okay. Let's get I'm going to do a little bit of Linux tonight. So what I would advise is opening up, if you want to follow along, open up a notepad of some type. How's it going, Zorgal? Let me find, if I can, here's my ticker info. Like, so there's our ticker info in real time. We're group of professionals and hobbyists. Yep. Clip. You can clip if you want. Exclamation mark ask. I probably should take that off there. We don't really do it anymore. Should be good. Control S. That should fix that. To clip. Discord. There you go. All right. Let me get that out of the way. Oh, sorry guys. I got a yawn. I've been very tired lately. Lots of working, lots of writing Ansible. I was actually going to show you guys some Ansible that I was writing for work today. So we might do that here in a little bit. But what I wanted to do was for people that wanted to, you know, the last couple days we were working on getting into Linux, right? And one of the things about getting into the job of Linux and Linux administration is kind of figuring out what the job looks like figuring out like what you should know about things. So what I was going to have us do was just go through some labs that I have. And I guess we could decide. I don't care the order we do it. We could do the services, which are like things that a admin may be in charge of and may be checking on and those kind of things. And I have my notes here for us and things for us to talk through as we do the services. So we could do just generic services and work through those if we wanted. Or we could do the security side of things, which we've done these all on stream before, but I figured if you guys wanted to work on them, we would. And I'm just going to work through the labs and talk through them with you guys, and just, you know, people that want to get better at doing Linux, we can do that. So I guess I will go with whatever I hear. I don't want to do a poll for it because polls take too long. But you guys can decide. I'll give you guys a minute to decide before I start. What else do we have? I got the camera working today, so the camera should be working up there in the top right. That's a little sand art thing. It looks like it's clearing right now. It does like a little sand art thing that my wife has. It's like a little, it does all kinds of fun little shapes. We'll see what it starts drawing here in a little bit. But I don't see anybody. I got no takers yet, so I guess I'll just start. So what we'll do first is, if anybody wants to follow along with this lab with me, this is the lab I'm going to do. And the lab is Killer Coda. And here will be the first one, which is configuring an NFS share. So if you've never done this before, if you've never messed around with NFS, we're gonna, yep, that's what we're doing. So we'll mess around with this. I'm gonna make the lab screen a little bigger for you guys. Remember, Killer Coda is a free website. It's honestly one of the best things on the web because you guys can just do labs with me. We're in the same exact environment. It's not like you're over on Arch and I'm on some kind of RHEL style system and we're sitting there arguing about if it's Etsy NetPlan or Etsy, some other, I don't know, wherever we would be setting up networking. Some of these different tools and different distros go all kinds of different ways inside of networking. So, there's that. Anyway, so this lab says your team has determined they need an NFS share to facilitate file system access across multiple servers from one central location. Okay. That sounds like something that we might need to do or know. And it says deploy the NFS server on node 01. Okay. So I'm going to do that. And it says share out the file system from /share to any system. So any system should be able to connect to it. We can lock that down. We can secure that. But first we need to get it shared out for, it's one of these things. I need to see it work the first time and then I can work on dialing it back. That's not always true. I mean, if there's good security documentation, you can build security in up front. But when we're just doing lab testing, sometimes it's good to just see something connect. And then we'll verify that the system is being shared out. So the the file system is shared on the system. So let's go over to node 01. That's the first thing. We'll just SSH over there. We know we're on node 01 from a few reasons, but mainly we just SSH'd over there and we see it in our command prompt. And we're going to see if there's any NFS packages on there. There are not. So over here we say, if you were on a server, if you got a trouble ticket to like start up NFS on a server, you're just sitting there as some admin. One thing I might ask right away is the package that these people want me to start on the box, right? If I do like a systemctl status of NFS, NFS isn't there. There's no NFS daemon or any type of, whatever service they're asking me for. So if you're doing admin work, that should give you pause. You shouldn't be, as an admin, installing packages like that. Even if you have root, even if your repositories are set, you should not be just willy-nilly installing packages because the team asks you to. This almost always needs to go up to higher because just opening packages and opening ports isn't really in the purview of admin teams. I'm just going to tell you for sure that's something that'll get you fired. Well, you definitely get your hand slapped in a company, but then you'll eventually get fired if you're just opening services. Because what you're doing is you're introducing a risk to the company that wasn't there before. So my point is, if somebody asks you to just turn something on, make sure you have the business need, business case, testing environment, whatever you're doing, you have the authority to do that in your company. Because you might say, I'll just install it, whatever, close out the trouble ticket, go about my day. It's going to come back and bite you one day. Security's going to scan and they're going to find it. Somebody's going to, this always happens, right? And you say, well, but they asked for it. The team doesn't know what they're asking for. The person that put in that ticket probably got yelled at by his manager to just get whatever it is running. And you know what I'm saying? They just threw in the trouble ticket hoping it would work. But that's not the business process side of things. And you might say, well, like as an engineer, do I really have to worry about that? If you're on the engineering side of things, you should know what you're building. But if you're on the admin side of things, sometimes you're like, I hate to say it like this, but you have to play like the bad cop. You have to play like the police a little bit about your environment, because if you own root in an environment, if you're a root admin on a box, you really are responsible for everything that happens on that server. And I tell people all the time, if you don't want that responsibility, you don't want to be an admin. I mean, you might think you want to be an admin, you might think you want to get, paid good money doing that stuff and running that stuff for companies, but you really don't if you're not going to accept that responsibility. So that's just the thing to think about. Yeah, it needs to go through some type of process where they go and they look at. Yeah. So a lot of times, like let's say somebody just asked for it and wasn't there. Most of the time that means the server was built incorrectly, the server was requested incorrectly. Sometimes it's just some kind of thing. But at a bare minimum, if I'm adding a package like this to a box in an operations environment, I need to have this documented, right? So this can't just be through a trouble ticket. This has to come through some type of change request typically. And it's going to depend on the maturity of your organization. In this case, we know that we want to build it out and we know we want to test it. So I'm just giving you guys different scenarios, right? I mean, the technical side of this stuff is pretty straightforward. We just push some buttons and install it. So we look and we see the package isn't there. And we're just going to install the NFS kernel server on this box. That's the name of the package. We could also do like an apt search for NFS and find it. But we know that that's the package we want. Maybe we've searched the interwebs, or maybe we read some thing on how to install NFS on a 2404 version of Ubuntu. That's what we know is our version. So deploy the NFS server package, and then now if you rerun your dpkg, you'll see that you have some packages there. Also, you'll note that you only told it to install one thing, but it went and installed all this other stuff. And I always kind of ask you, like, what's the purpose of all these other things? The following additional packages will be installed. Well, why do I care about RCP bind and NFS common? I told it to give me this kernel server. Well, it also, if you set up the server, it assumes you want the client packages to maybe test. And then also you need RPC bind, because that's how systems that connect in are going to bind to the different ports that they're going to get from the original NFS port, right? So systems come in on 2049, but sometimes they're connected on different ports after they initially connect to your server. So they have that. There's this one lib NFS ID map. It's probably some type of backend mapping from usernames and that kind of stuff, and it's required for it. So then there's that. There's suggested packages that may or may not be installed, and it looks like they probably were all installed. But you can also, when you do your apt install, you can tell it, don't do any recommended, only do the required ones, and your system will adhere to that, right? Whatever we do here, though, this is very important. When I install it like this when I'm first doing my testing, perfectly fine to just do it like that. apt-y install everything. Once I get that package list, though, and I go back to build this for production, I'm going to only install the exact things by name and typically by version number, so I'm locking it in on that system as this is the exact way that I build things. Now, not everybody does all that. It's really up to your team. It's up to kind of your standard of how you build things. But I'll tell you, like, if versions are changing underneath, you haven't tested that yet. So that's something to think about in your build process, right? But we're talking admin stuff here. So we've installed the service. And now the next thing is we want to see, is it running? And it looks like right here when we did systemctl status NFS server, we see that it is enabled and it is active. So active means it's running right now. ss-ntulp will show us that it's also running. It's got an open port. It's got a process ID. There's no exported file systems yet, which makes sense because we didn't set anything up. But I should be able to psef and look for, I should be able to look for the PID 11226, right? So just look for that PID. And I can see, where is that at? 11226, that's the main PID. That's weird. Oh, that was the main PID, 11226. Did I not type that right? I always type things wrong. We definitely see that NFS server is running, though. Another way we can look at this, we can say LSOF for port number 2049, right? And see that it doesn't seem to be open, even though it is there listening. That's interesting. It definitely shows that it's listening. Okay. But the point is, we can see that it's there. We can see that our system's listening. And one of the things that we can do is if we wanted to, we could grep NFS from Etsy services, and we would see that NFS tends to be network file system on 2049 listening on our system, right? That's how our system maps it, right? Sergeant Silver, maybe you'd have connected to run a process. Is that a thing? Yeah, so when a node connects, we'll be able to see it. It'll map to a different port typically that's actually being connected to from that other server, but it comes in on port 2049 to check for NFS. So we'll do that here in a second. We'll actually connect with a client here and see it actually run. But we can see, so if I were to go to this node, right, I get a trouble ticket and say node 01 was supposed to have NFS on it, and then now in this case I see NFS. Is NFS running? Yes, the server is running. It says that it's got, that's the main PID that started it. I could probably go find NFS on the system. If maybe there's the NFSD, yeah, so NFS daemon. So I could go look at what any of these ones are looking at if I wanted to. But the original process that started was 1126, yeah, and it looks like it finished successful, so that's good. And that was just the startup script. And then I say, is it sharing anything? Showmount-E, it's not sharing anything yet, which makes sense because we haven't told it to share anything. So all we did was install a tool and it happened to turn on, right? That's all we've got here. So yeah, so over here we say, is it installed? Yes, we had to install it for the lab. Is it running? Yes. But is it configured in any way? No, we didn't do anything with that yet. So I say now notice the service is running on ports 2049 are open for TCP and UDP connections and no shares are being shared out. So let's make sure the firewall is off on this box. So the UFW status shows it's inactive. The firewall is ready to run though. If I said system CTL status UFW, it's ready to run the uncomplicated firewall, but it's not actually active in an active mode right now. So it's not doing anything. So we only check that just to make sure that there's nothing blocking our ports, because if we don't explicitly allow it, that one's not going to be connected in our in our lab. So we say, okay, that's good. We should see it disabled or inactive. And then I say, let's create a directory to share out. So we're going to make directory share, and we're just going to give it, we're going to give it some simple permissions here of nobody and no group. So if I do an ls-ld on share, I see that it's got nobody and no group, and its permissions by default are 755 in my environment, right? So it's sitting there, it's ready to share out. Question here, is UFW actually useful for something other than getting your hair at some point? Yeah, it is Sergeant Silver. In our lab environment, we mostly just leave it off. But the way that we run firewalls, the reason we run firewalls is, let me pull something up here. My system rebooted and it's just a hassle, but I'm pretty sure I have a, let me see if I have, I think I have this drawing from a long time ago. It's a totally old drawing, but somebody had asked me about this the other day, and it's one of my drawings. Hold on. Is it this one? Yeah. So it was this one, and it was specifically about building a golden image. So this was a one that we had used before around. I'll move that over there. And the reason a firewall would work is this right here, because that's a very valid question. Why might you want? Oh, hold on. I need to turn something on here. Streaming. Should be Twitch chat. There we go. Now you guys can at least see your chat. There you go. Because then the questions will make sense to people because they're just popped up on the screen. How's it going, King Buns? So the question was, so here's the question. I think I just dropped it on the screen so you guys should be able to see it. The question was, does a firewall actually matter? And in a lot of secure environments, it does. And the reason is this. Because if somebody had accidentally, like I just mentioned, turned on port 2049, or had accidentally turned on a web server, which is port 80, the fact that you allowed one of those open ports on your system is there's what's called a mitigating factor, or mitigating risk factor, or mitigating technology, where you didn't allow it through the firewall. So you have on TCP and UDP side 0 to 65 535 total ports, right? 0 to 65 535, but you can't use 65 535, so it's one less. But if somebody accidentally turns a service on, but you've got a firewall running, it's like almost like a spongy little protector in front that doesn't allow the connection through. So if you accidentally turn on a web server on port 80, but you didn't allow it through a turned on firewall, you are still protected because that does not allow connections in still. So there is a certain amount of protection on that. So it's different levels of protection, Sergeant Silver, because you're saying failed to ban. Failed to ban is an intrusion protection service, because what it does is it makes changes to protect the port, blocks things that aren't doing what they should, jails a service, all that kind of stuff. And that's valid. That is a valid way to do things. But that's after the connection has been established. The firewall is blocking before that and saying, I don't care if you opened it back there. It's like me and the wife, we just opened the back window to our room to kind of cool the house off here. But we've got a screen on the window. So like opening the window real wide could let, I don't think we have bats around here, but a bat could fly in. But there's a screen over the window that blocks that, right? It's like a port to my house that's now open, but there's a screen mesh over it that stops. I mean, it couldn't stop everything, but it could stop at least something small enough to bounce off it, right? So your firewall acts as it's like a mitigating protection to your system. And good environments that are really set up for security-minded companies, like security-postured companies, will have some type of host-based firewall. It is a hassle. Like you just said, it's a kind of a headache. But it keeps us from, like I just was talking earlier about, like willy-nilly turning shit on in our environment. Even if your admins are turning stuff on, they have to know how to go modify that firewall. And that's not that an admin wouldn't know how to do that, I guess. It's just, it's one more factor of like control around things and that kind of stuff. You don't, but in home labs and a lot of, I would say like most companies won't do that, but if you start getting over into like your PCI environments, your payment card industry environments, and especially if you're doing like zero trust stuff, it's not just all the services are open and the servers are sitting there open. No, the servers are sitting there locked down, and they're only allowing servers that can connect to them where they should. Also, I was thinking about it right now as I was trying to close my hand. You guys might notice I got a little Band-Aid on there. I got cut pretty good. Like sometimes people don't shave or don't fix their nails up in jiu-jitsu, so I had like a pretty gnarly looking little cut on my knuckle, and I was like, ugh, it's gonna be. It doesn't hurt or anything. It just was bleeding earlier, and I'm like, ugh. So the wife put a Band-Aid on it, and then she kissed it. I told her the kiss is very important. The Neosporin and the Band-Aid, they don't do much. It's the kiss that works. Okay. Anyways, you guys are like, this fucking guy. All right. Where is it configured? So Node 01 now has this service. We dpkg-l for NFS. We can see that. By the way, if you guys want to learn this stuff, and if you're doing the lab with me, open up a notepad, right? Do like I did. I did these notes on stream a while back, and these are things that, like, what would I want to know about a service? What would I want to know about an environment? If I was coming into an environment and I had a weird trouble ticket, how would I go check these things? So that's what these commands are. So learn how to do these tasks, because these are the exact tasks you're going to do as an admin. Okay. So anyways, we got NFS on the box. System CTL status NFS tells us NFS, what is it? Dash server shows that it's there, right? So it's installed. But one of my favorite ones is NFS systemctl cat. Cat is a great command. Cat will show you where the system actually looked for that service file. So when my system started the NFS-server service, it was using userlib systemd system nfs-server.service. So it's down in the userlib systemd system folder, right? That's the directory path for it. That's useful for me because I know that that's not like etc systemd system, where one of us might have made it. I know that that is controlled by the service. So if I go in there and modify this directly, that's going to get overwritten when somebody reinstalls this tool, if they delete it and reinstall it, those kind of things. You look like James Earl Jones when you talk into the mic. You probably hear that. I've never actually heard that. That's actually really funny. That's funny for a few reasons, but that's pretty good. I've been told I sound like I'm South African, and I'm like, I guess so. I mean, I've never been to South Africa, so I wouldn't know, but probably like 15 years ago on the internet, I remember there was like this South African rap group, and that's like probably the only time I've heard somebody seriously speak South African, like in that dialect. That's probably the only time, and I think that's kind of funny. They sound a bit more like the Brits. I definitely shouldn't be getting accused of sound like the Brits, which is kind of funny. But look at all these things. So this shows me how the service was supposed to start, and then I don't really even go into it over here because we were just kind of looking at it, but here's a nice one. One of my favorite things to show people is there's a systemd analyze tool. This is a fantastic tool, systemd-analyze, and I can say critical chain for my nfs-server.service. I gotta type it out. It doesn't work without the typing it out. And this will tell me from bottom up to where NFS server started, this whole path. That's the critical chain of services that had to start for my NFS server service to come up. So if I had come to this server, let's say I came to the server and somebody was telling me something's not right on our servers after you guys patched this weekend and rebooted them all. I would do an uptime and I would see that the node had rebooted. That's always something I check. And then I might say, well, systemctl -- failed. Like, is anything failed from when the server came up, right? And that's one way to check that. And then you could also say, this is the older way. Somebody showed me that, and I'm like, that's a great shortcut, because I used to always do it like this. Systemctl status, it's list services, no, it's list units, and then state equals failed. That's how I used to do it. Whoops, list unit. All right. It might just be list units like that. Is that right? Yeah. So that's how I used to do it, right? The list units state equals failed. And somebody was like, you could just do -- failed. And I was like, oh, shit. Anyways, yeah. Systemd analyze blame, one of my favorites. This is actually good, too, for seeing System D right here. Yeah, analyze blame. This shows the time it took for the system to come up, right? This shows you all the things that took a long time. So I've actually been in systems and in environments where we were in a race to get the systems up in under an hour. We had to get all the nodes from bare metal up. We had a government requirement. So we were in there actually looking at what was the long pole in the tent. These are, by the way, fun fact about this. So you can use systemd analyze blame, and you can use systemd analyze, it's not startup. Yeah, you could just do systemd analyze, and this will tell you the time it took to come up. So graphical target in this box, which is run level 5, came up at 8.143 seconds. That's the total time it took to get up, and the startup finish total was at 12.383 seconds, right? The reason that's important is you go and you look at these real quick. So if that's 12 seconds total, just follow along with me here real quick. And then you come up here and you go 3 plus 2 plus 2. We're already at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. These are obviously not serialized services. These are parallel. And they're not in chronological order of startup. This is just what took the longest time, right? That's an important thing to understand. Also, I apologize, guys. I don't know why my Twitch chat will not scroll. I have to keep scrolling it down. But this is, I just wanted you guys to see. So there's all kinds of commands here to, and use the ones that work, not my busted ones, to figure out about the system and how it started. But for us, we really wanted to know for NFS, right? Our tool is NFS that we're using. We wanted to see, is it installed and is it running? And in the lab, we had to set it up, so we did that. Where is it configured from, right? So over here, we made a directory, but now we're going to share it out. So I'm going to VI my Etsy exports, hit Shift-G-O to go to a new line. So Shift-G drops the bottom O, gives me a new line. And I'm going to say, drop in this line right here, which just looks like this, share to anyone, read, write, sync, and then no subtree. And there are all kinds of other things that you could add. There's all kinds of what we call server options and mount options, but we're just going to do that for now. And then real quick, if I do that, this is a thing to think about. If I make that change in my Etsy exports, do I expect when I do show mount -E, do I expect that mount point that I just shared out to show up or not? This is not me trying to trick you guys. This is not me trying to be like, I know, and you guys are all stupid. No, this is just like, does this make sense to you guys? If I make a change in a service, or if I make a change in a config file somewhere, it doesn't ever show up until we restart the service. That's been built out of necessity, because what if the thing that was going and checking, if something were checking live, and I was like halfway through editing the file and I had like saved the file, but I hadn't finished my edit. Now we would have a broken config when it reread the config. So you have to tell a Linux box to reread the config. Well, or service in this case, right? And that's a design decision. That's a smart one. So let's restart the service, and now we see our shared out mount point right there. Show mount -E. You can also do what's the other one that people always use? Oh, there's another command. There's another. It's not show mount. It's the same one people use to reshare. Somebody would probably know it. Yeah, change the SSH port and wonder why you can still connect. Yeah. There's another one, Sergeant Silver, that I've had to show people and enforce. We'll have a bunch of users coming in through, an SSH service. Well, when SSHD is running and then it spawns a process, that process that spawns is a no-hup SSH process for that user that's come in, and then that spawns a bash shell. We could demonstrate that. I could show you guys that. We can look at that. I'm just going to tell you guys that. So you'll have like 1,000 users connected on a login server, right? And you'll have to do something for like a critical reason against the SSH daemon. A lot of times, by the way, we would roll through users or whatever. But I've had to explain this to teams before. I can do that maintenance and restart that service, and I won't affect any of those users. But that change has not been populated to their SSHD because it was a spawn. It's almost like a clone of the original. It's a child process that's no-hupped. So my point is, you can do maintenance on SSHD without taking out the users that are already there. But if there's some kind of critical problem or some kind of whatever, it's not populated through or rolled through. And in some of those environments, especially HPC, people will have connections long connected for like 3 weeks. They'll be keep aliving and leaving them open. And yeah, a lot of times that's bad practice and you should reap those or whatever. But the point is, if you don't, those still exist and they still have whatever original vulnerabilities were there. So that's kind of a thing. So that's a thing to think about for people for sure. In this case, we're just restarting a service and making sure that it's reread its config. And I'm seeing the things that I expect to be shared out of the box. So there we go. On the client then, so now we're going to bounce out of this machine and we're going to set up the client side of things. So set up the client connection. So far you've set up an NFS server over on node 01. Now we have to connect to it from another system. So we install the NFS common client on this box, and then we make a share, or from there we take that shared directory and we put it in /mount. Now /mount is not normally where we mount things. That's like where USBs and CDs and all those things typically used to get mounted back in the day. Normally we will mount it to, like I would make like a shared directory and mount it, or I would mount it in like opt or something depending on what I wanted to use it for and what data permissions I needed and stuff. But let's just go ahead and install it real quick on this box. This is just NFS common. So I see a smaller number of packages needed. You guys might have seen that. We looked at that earlier. Like, what are the packages? I asked for one package, but I get all these other packages. Why is that? You still mount? Yeah, it's fine. I mean, there's no problem with it. It's just you wouldn't normally go right to mount like we did in this lab. It's just for this. Maybe I would do like mount/share or something. But so I'm just going to mount it real quick. So how would I check? Let's clear the screen. df-h to check what's there. Oh, that's way too much noise. So maybe I do my df-h and maybe say grep-v container, right? Because that's all those container stuff. So we got rid of all that, and we do not see the NFS share here. It makes sense. We didn't connect to it yet. And now we're going to mount it in a non-persistent way. We're just going to say, okay, just to test it right now, do I see... and we could just do df-h grep share, right, like that. And there I see node 01 shared to/mount. The system automatically knew, because when you put the NFS common tools on there, it has the NFS mount helper. It automatically knew to use the NFS type. So if I do mount and grep for share, I would see that node 01 share over here, and the type is NFS. That's the only NFS file system we have mounted. And here's a bunch of things that were taken by default on this client from that node over there. Now you might say, well, Scott, this is all you did on this side. And on the other side, I saw you do a really small little share. Where'd all this other stuff come from? Well, most of this other stuff is defaults, and all of those defaults are configurable if you want to change them, right? It's much like how TCP comes out of the box. It's going to work for most of you most of the time, in most ways. So you really don't need to muck around with that stuff a lot unless it's like security reasons. And if you need to modify this, you would do it in the config files. If you need to modify any of these defaults, you'd go down the config files. If you needed to change like how TCP works, you would do sysctl commands, right? You would either modify the files directly or you would modify them right here for testing purposes and that kind of stuff. There's going to be a lot of these. Right, here's all the TCP stuff that's going on in your system, right? And I'm only seeing IPv4, but these are all the settings for TCP. There's a whole bunch more if we do IP as well, right? If we did just IP settings, but these are TCP type settings that might affect the way that our system works, right? Something I show you guys sometimes is ICMP is how we do ping, right? Internet Control Messaging Protocol. And if you want a system, I've told you guys this before and showed you. If you want your Linux boxes to behave as black holes and not respond to ping, this is a design decision. Some people like it. You can turn off. Your systems will not respond to ping anymore if you set that to 1. They will ignore all. They won't respond to ping. And we could test that. We could show that, right? But the point is, that's not really the point of this lab. We can validate that we could write to that file system, and then we see that file that we just made sitting there. We can unmount that file system, and actually then we could test again. There's nothing in there, right? Because we unmounted the file system, we disconnected it. And then maybe we go and we want to make that persistent. So I go down here, I hit Shift-G-O, and I add this line right here, node 01, which is the path to the share that I want. This is share, right? And then we're going to mount locally in MNT. We're going to give NFS as the file system type, and defaults, we'll take all the defaults. And then 0 and 0 here say, this first 0 is do not do FSCK checks, right? Don't do checks. And this one says don't automatically back up if there's backups, right? That's what these two numbers mean. And they're set differently for different things, but you can go look that up if you want in the etcfs tab file. Now, if I do that, this is an old admin trick. I say it right here. This is an old systems administrator trick. If I do my df-h from earlier, right? df-h, it doesn't matter. There we go. That's the one I wanted. I see that it's not mounted right now because I've unmounted it. And the trick that I like to show junior admins, anybody that'll listen to me, Mount-A will do a lot of things for you right here. If I do Mount-A, oh, it's interesting. This system's using system D, so now I should do system CTL daemon reload. That's good. And then I'll do a Mount-A, right? And what that will prove is if my file, my etcfs tab file is correctly set, and if it mounted this, which we'll see right here that it did, I will see that it has mounted, it has worked correctly, and that is tremendously useful for a thing called persistence. Well, also a thing called stability. If your etcfs tab is broken, does anybody here know what happens if your etcfs tab is broken and you boot a server? Anybody know? You'll know if you know. People that have been there know. What happens if your etcfs tab, if this file, if this is busted, oh, whoops, fs tab, fstab. It's a 5-minute wait time. Sometimes you drop into a root shell, right? Like a break shell, and then you've got a busted system, a recovery shell, and then you got to go fix your fs tab to come back up. Yeah, boot hangs. That's exactly, any of those things are true depending on what's going on. Sometimes if you have like a soft wait on NFS, that won't hang. But yeah, any of those things can be true, especially if you're busting these. If you go break this, you go break your root file system and you can't switch root to the right root, oh, you're gonna have a bad time. So yeah, it's a brick. Yeah, it's exactly right. You're gonna be consoled in and fixing this box. The reason I point that out then, the reason the Mount-A is so useful then, is it's a live check of can my system read that file and like do all the things. Will my system come up correctly? And like you just saw, I had this weird message that I don't normally see, which is the FS tab. Okay, system CTL daemon reload, whatever. Run my Mount-A. Did it read everything? Did it parse everything? Did it add that new share in? That share is non-breaking to the build and startup of my server. I'm cool. For me, as an engineer on the engineering side of this, I call that box done. I'd boot it to make sure it comes up, and then I'd be good. That's kind of my system. Missing all kinds. Yeah, you can have all kinds of problems for sure, 100%. Daniel Sparrow said, "Is book good to purchase for someone with novice level Linux experience?" I think so. Yeah, Daniel, the book. I tell you guys all the time, the book over here, not required for anybody. You guys can buy it if you want to, but all the book does is come to My Killer Coda right here and give you a little more color commentary around the Linux and the Ansible labs. That's all it is. It gives you kind of like a little bit journaling, some more questions and stuff around these labs that are already free. So you guys that have been around know all of the Killer Coda labs are free. You guys can go click in any one of these and start doing configs. We're actually just working through the NFS one right here, and then asking ourselves questions as we go. But my point is, you could do hundreds of hours of Linux stuff with us well before you ever chose to buy the book if you wanted to. So just don't think, Daniel, don't think you need to like buy the book to hang out or anything. You can just hang out and you'll probably pick up a lot without the book. I tell people all the time, the book is like if you want to dig deeper into some of this stuff, and it's more on the technical side, whereas like what we're doing right now and the last few days, we were focused on like getting the job. We were looking at why isn't it all the way over on the left? We were doing this the last few days. Where is it at? I don't even know where it is. I had this file open. I don't know why it's not like the far right one, but I don't remember. Anyways, the point is we're over here on services, and we're just asking ourselves questions, and we're going through the lab and digging deeper. So this is a lot like what the book stuff is too. So if anybody's wondering, but yeah, you don't need the book to hang out. I tell you guys all the time, come hang out in the Discord. Sit around and talk with other engineers and stuff if you guys want. So kernel shell and then mount manually. Yeah, well, Smitty, that's what would happen. Yeah, if you bust that, you're probably going to have a bad day. I just tell you guys, that's the number one thing that just probably, in fact, one of our guys, he was doing like an RHCSA and he had everything right. And then he busted his etcfs tab and he couldn't get back in and get it up. So I think he had to retake the test, even though he knew all the stuff, right? Like knowing the stuff was easy. He was a Linux guy for a long time, but he busted his etcfs tab in like the last 5 minutes when he was checking stuff, and he couldn't get his box to come back up. And some of you guys know that's an automatic fail in RHCSA. If your box doesn't come up on a reboot, that's the first thing they do for their check before they do any other checks. If the server doesn't reboot, they don't even bother grading your test. You get zeros down the board. So I think he had to he could tell you if he's around, because he's around pretty often. But all right, so my point is then, control plane, if we do a df-h on MNT, he's mounted over there. If we ls-l and mount, we see that file that we made. Cool, everything's connected. But then the next thing maybe is, what if there's a problem? What if I can't write over there, or I have just generally broken stuff in my environment? Well, I would want, node 01, I would want to go to node 01, because that's the server, typically. That's the server. And where would I check for errors and stuff? Like if there were errors, like, right, if I was looking for errors, where would I go look for them? And typically, varlog syslog will have a fair amount of errors in there. And if I'm having errors on the box, that might be there. I might also just grep for NFS from etc, varlog syslog, right? Oops. And then there's my NFS stuff. And maybe in here I see that like a node is connecting, or I see that there's errors or messages. Maybe I look in here for, the control plane maybe isn't connecting over, right? That's a complaint from a user. Hey, I'm having problems accessing these shares. Or sometimes they're having problems starting a program, and you just happen to know that program's config files are out there. That could be a design decision by your teams. Maybe some of us would say that's not a great design decision. Maybe it's fine because it's just an NFS link to a centralized location. Guys, there's all kinds of different things that you're going to find built out there in the world. And a lot of the stuff you're going to be like, what the hell is this? And honestly, like, it made the most sense to some other engineer, right? But let's go real and say control plane, right? And I say, okay, so I don't see anything with control plane, but do I see anything, right? I can just grep control plane from varlog, anything really. And do I see control plane doing anything? No, I don't even see control plane in my logs. But it might be by resolved IP. So, well, it doesn't matter that much. We can go see. It may be looking at the logs. Right? We may look for that in there, right? There's all kinds of things we could do. There, let's just throw that in there. So maybe we see it by IP, 172.30.1.2, right? Right, and maybe I'm dumb. Do I see that anywhere? And I say, oh, I do see some of that down in syslog. I see something happening, and I don't. We dig into what all the different things are doing and what the different messages are that we're seeing. These messages are almost, we're running between the two environments, Kubernetes, so we're going to see other Kubernetes stuff. But the point is, yeah, I do see some IP address mappings and stuff going on, but maybe unrelated to NFS in this case. So anyways, point is, that's where the logs would be. And then, is there a monitoring solution involved? Do I have some place to go look at what maybe the network storage usage is in my company? Is there a place for me to go monitor this where I don't have to go all the way down and dig in on a box and do df-h and that kind of stuff? And does that monitoring show me that the highest server in our network storage usage is 84.8%, so I can call us good for this Friday. I know we're going to make it through the weekend or whatever, because maybe that doesn't store a lot of stuff. There's not a big growth spike or something. All right, anyway, so let me pull that back up. I just closed my whole window down. So again, we're doing this lab. We're looking at NFS. Maybe we mounted everything. We do our df-h. Mount is not there, but it is over here. And then maybe we touch a little final check just to make sure that we see that being written in there. And then we can check, and it says, look at us learning Linux. We did all this NFS stuff. We set it up in our environment in a very manual Linuxy way. And we could now answer these questions. If somebody sent me a question about, is NFS on a box? I could go check very quickly. Is it installed on that server? Yes. Oh, whoops, DPKG. Oh, what's going on? Somebody's not typing right. There, it's installed. Is it running? Do we know if the service is running? Yes. Right, NFS.server, right? That's the name of the service. Yeah, it's started on the environment. Is it listening? grep can just be 2049 in this 49 in this case. Yes, we see it. Another trick for that is LSOF-I and then the colon for the port number. So 2049 here would show us if anything was. That's super weird that that's not showing up right there. Because normally the listening port shows up, or the listening process shows up right there. That's just kind of weird. Anyways, that's typically what you would do to check. All right, but do we see it sharing out? So show mount -E. And then the other one that I was thinking about earlier was export FS. Remember I said I couldn't remember that one? Export FS would also show us that it's sharing. And export FS also has a force option. I don't remember it. So it's export FS, and that's like force, or I don't know what it is. But there's one that will reread and reshare. There it is. It'll re-export all the directories. And it'll sync everything and restart. So export fs-r will re-export all directories. I don't think I've ever used that professionally. I've just restarted the service. But could you use that? I mean, guys, I'm not going to tell you how to make your biscuits. I'm not going to tell you how to, do whatever. But I'm just showing you guys different tools that exist there, and then you can use whichever ones work for you. Also, Fisherman, that's the least cursed image I think you've ever dropped in our channel. The Ross Burger Potty. I was in Ross's channel earlier. I was hanging out. I don't think I bugged him too much. I got there on time today. So if I get there on time, I just kind of say hi or whatever. But then if I get there late, I always ask for like a restart. I'm like, can we restart the whole stream over? I figure that gives them a little time to relax and chill and hang out and stuff. So, all right. So from an admin standpoint, from like a services standpoint, could we install a service? We did that for the lab, but do we know these things about a service as an admin? Yeah, we could check all these things. So cool, that's good. If you are like, Scott, that's cool, but I need a little more. Can you give me something a little more challenging? I would say, yeah, you can go. If you said, hey Scott, I want that same thing, but I want to do that in like an automated fashion. So you could do that with with Ansible. So with Ansible, I have which one has NFS right here? So this is the deployer. This is a different lab. We're not going to do that lab right now, but I'm going to link it for people that want it. And this one right here is that same lab, but in Ansible. So you wouldn't get all these questions over here, right? This was us doing the questions and asking ourselves these things. But that Ansible playbook will deploy a server and a client or many clients in an environment for you. Then it walks you through how to do the Ansible. Linux, how's it going? I'm just kind of hanging out here and working through labs and stuff. And the next one we're going to do is this Apache lab. So if anybody wants to do this one with me, this is configuring an Apache server. So this is the lab we're doing. Some of you guys know I used to pretty much spend Sunday mornings doing labs with people and talking through things and working on stuff. And the lab, strictly speaking, the lab is independent of the stuff on the left. The lab is standalone, setting up some tool in an environment. But the notes on the left were things that I thought that an admin would want to know about that service, right? And about that environment. So if you were taking notes, you could steal these notes. These notes are also up in our Discord. If anybody doesn't know about the Discord, typically you pop in here, and on our Discord, you go to like meeting notes, and you'll find these somewhere up in our meeting notes, right? Typically, I'll put things in there that we're talking about or whatever. Also, there's a bunch of events coming up. We've got a Bash study group, 16-week automation course is running. I gotta do some stuff for that. The automation course study group, and then I just dropped one up. Looks like we're doing a getting into streaming one. That's one that I run for you guys that want to learn how to do some of this basic streaming stuff. And then Jared's going to come talk. Some of you guys know Jared. He's been a friend of mine for a long time. He's a data architect with a pretty good-sized web company. He does all of their Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager stuff. And he's going to come talk about data architecture and AI tools. And he's going to talk about some projects he's done recently. We typically have, like when Jared talks, we typically have like 30, 40 people come. But, you know, all of our talks and all of our stuff is free. So just go find it in Discord if you guys want. Discord's free. Hit Discord or look wherever. Okay, so let's do this lab. It says your team has determined they need a website to test deployments rapidly. Why your team isn't using Kubernetes, I don't know. Maybe they don't have the budget for the expertise. Maybe they've just not ventured into that space yet. A lot of people ask, you know, I'll be showing something, they'll be like, why would we be doing it this way? Isn't all the industry? Yeah, all the industry that can afford it is over there. But some companies are not very far forward on like the technology adoption. They do things further back. They do things slower. There's this whole thing called the technology adoption curve. I'm always showing it to people where it's like you can be on a team that is still maintaining like RHEL 6. I know somebody who just got off of RHEL 5 last year. There was a company still running RHEL 5 because some of the databases they were on hadn't been migrated forward yet. That is significantly old. And RHEL 5 was out of support for many, many, many years. You were well past the normal extended support at that point. But, you know, so you're not getting patches, so you're not within compliance there's all kinds of things going on there. But anyway, so let's go over here. You're going to deploy an Apache 2 web server on node 01. So, right, get over on node 01. Capture the version of installed Apache 2 packages for your records. You need those. The security team's going to ask you about them. They're going to have scans. They're going to come at you about making sure you're patching it. There's all kinds of things that whenever you put anything onto a server, now you have to consider the implications of that. Verify node 01's listening on port 80 because that's going to be the default port. And then we're going to verify that a basic web page is working. Those are our simple steps to start off the lab, right? Let's come down here and look at our solution. We SSH to node 01. We make sure that there's no Apache service on there. There's no Apache packages installed. And let's go ahead and install them on the box. So all these other things had to be installed. Remember we were just looking at this a second ago. I said to install one thing, but it just installed like 30 things. So, okay. Then it's building the service here. You can see that it's sim linking for the startup. That's cool. And then we can go look. Are the packages there? Yep, there's a bunch of Apache 2 packages. And is the system running? The service is running on port 80. I see it right here, LSOF-I:, port 80. I see it listening. And then I can also check to see that port 80 is being listened to here for any address coming in. And then here is the process ID 7028. I can go look at stuff with that. I can go LSOF-P on 7028, and I can look at that process, and I can see what ports and files it's holding open. I can see all kinds of things that are going on with the server. So cool. I can dig in. And that's kind of a question over here. Can we tell that something's installed on our system? Yes. Yeah. So Sergeant Silver should also loan you Wolf admin. You don't have time to learn about all the latest. Fair enough. Yeah, yeah. That's true. Yeah. Often I tell guys all the time, man, this is how it's been. I did a lot of odd jobs before I kind of well, with big companies still, but before I came to Redline, and then now I get dropped in. It's funny, they drop me in on HPC projects the same way. But I used to joke around, and you guys will hear me say this often, like when you get hired as a Linux admin, often you're going to sit down, the manager's going to hand you like a piece of paper with like the login to your environment, or maybe you get an email because maybe it's LDAP, but maybe he just has a root password on a paper or something. You log into the environment, and then you're going to turn to him and go, hey, that's really cool, I'm in. Is there any documentation on this? And you guys think I'm shitting you, but he's going to go like this. He's going to go, oh, you, and he's going to turn around and walk out because now it's your problem. He's just happy he's got a Linux admin now, or a Linux engineer to build and maintain this stuff. He has no idea, right? And maybe the last one left in a huff. Maybe the documentation's bad. But almost universally, it's like, oh, you, and they just fucking walk out on you, and you're like, I guess this is my environment now, right? Like, I guess I'm the one doing everything. And you figure stuff out as you go or whatever, but these are kind of skills like, you know, we get kind of dropped in with like a little backpack and we got to go figure it out, right? Like, what's going on? Yeah, not a clue. They have no idea. Even if they knew how to do the stuff, they're not in there. They just got status reports from somebody. They're hoping that everything stayed working, right? So in our environment, our point is here that we have Apache running now. We've installed it. It automatically turned on. That's important. We were talking earlier about a firewall. If your firewall's on, we don't have the firewall on in this environment, but if we did, port 80 would be open right now, but the firewall would still be blocking it, so we could test things internally, but other users wouldn't be able to get in from the outside. So that's kind of an important thing to kind of think of. This was a talk I gave long ago about like building a golden image, but I'm just using the example over here of like open ports and what firewalls, host-based firewalls do for you, right? They protect the host even if a service automatically opens on it, right? So anyway, so we might go look at it. One other thing to check here, this is very important. When you do your systemctl status Apache 2, one thing to notice right here, and we may, whoops, cancel. I may have to go over here, is to see if it's enabled. That means if it's enabled here, that means that it's going to start up on the next reboot of this server if it's a stateful node. So that means that this is turned on, it's running now for testing, but also it will persist through a reboot if the node is stateful. These boxes are not stateful, so don't reboot your lab box here. If you go and killer code and reboot anything, it's gone. You're gonna have to reset the whole environment. So yeah. You're not gonna find documentation, that's for sure. Night. So all right, so we did all that. And I say, what are the names of the users that kicked off the process? So we can go look at that here. It's Apache 2. That's the name of the user for the process, or sorry, the user is root, and then www data. That user will also show up if you grep www from etcpass wd. You'll see that user in there, and he's got a very, very low user ID. That is a very low user ID in a system. That denotes typically that it's a system type user ID. You can validate how your system sees user IDs by etc login.defs, right? So if you go and look at etc login.defs, you can see what your system thinks UIDs should be set at right here. So UIDs under a certain one should be whatever. Min-max values for auto selection is this. And then you can set those. But typically system UID minimum is 100 and max is 999. And then anything like down in 333 or 33, that's a very specialized one. And typically that's the one you're going to find for most Apache and HTTPD type users, is they use 33. Does it have to be that? No, absolutely not. Shunya, how's it going over on the YouTube side? We're hanging out. We're doing labs, right? Like the last few days, I was talking high level about getting work and getting into jobs and that kind of stuff. And like I don't want to say like people challenge me, but it's kind of like I want to make sure that people know that the group that we run is about like rubber meets the road admin work, right? Like admin and then getting into engineering and security and all those things. But it's not just like high-minded, oh, do this and learn this and then go fucking study on your own. No, I try to show you guys how to do this stuff because I think that you guys can do this. How is apt upgrade versus apt update? So upgrade will just upgrade will actually do the upgrade, and update will only update your metadata. So let's check that real quick. Make sure I'm not lying to you. If I'm just on node 01 apt update, right? This will just go read the metadata and make sure that the metadata is there and it says what can be upgraded, right? But then if I do upgrade, after I've updated my metadata, so when I say metadata, I mean your system is sitting there with a bunch of repositories that it's ready to go look at. They're in Etsy sources or Etsy sources.d, depending. Because there's other, you have extended configurations in there. But if you, but your system doesn't read those actively. There's tools that you can use to make those read actively. But my system just went and read all of the archives and pulled down metadata about the different packages that were in the archive and what's ready to be updated and stuff. And it said, hey, there's a bunch of stuff that can be upgraded when you're ready. So update only read the stuff. If I go apt upgrade, so apt list upgradable. Based on that updating of metadata, it thinks there's 42 packages that need to be updated in my environment, and it's these ones right here. So why might you need this? Let's just say you were running a little Ubuntu environment and you weren't really controlling a lot of stuff. You were just trusting the packages and going out. Well, in my lower dev environment, I might do this and test, and I might have gotten a message from security that said, hey, we got a, like a CVSS score of 7 against this glib 2.0 package. You need to update the version you're on. And I say, well, I'll go check to see if there's an update out in the repositories, right? Because guys, we're not in the business of writing our own updates. I hope you guys know that for the most part. Could most of us write them? Maybe. But that's not your job, is to be down in the weeds writing stuff. Plus, if you're in there writing stuff like that, you're going to be voiding warranties if you're paying for support from people and that kind of stuff. Open source is awesome. We can go and contribute to communities, but within a company, we don't write stuff ourselves. Like if I was maintaining a fleet of vehicles, I'm not rebuilding carburetors. I may rebuild carburetors. Does anybody even have carburetors anymore? I may rebuild fuel injectors, but I don't redesign fuel injectors for my tools. Does that make sense? And if I did, and then I ever had to call the factory for new parts, they'd be like, what the F is this? I can't work on this. It's the same way in the systems world. All that to say, hey, thanks for the Prime NAND FX. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you. You could use your Prime anywhere, but you chose to use it here, so that's kind of cool. What I'm talking about here, though, is you've got something from a security team that's found a vulnerability that exists in your system, and you don't write your own packages, right? So where do I get packages? Here. Do I have an updated package that will move me past? Because a CVSS, a CVE, Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, which is just a NIST database, when you're getting scanned, and typically it's like a Tenable Security or Qualys or some tool scanning your systems, they're going to tell you up until this version, this vulnerability has been found. But I say, oh, in that glib 2.0, and I'm just making this up, I'm moving to version 2.8.06. Oh, sorry about that, guys. And I see that it's past that version that you gave me. Yes, I'm ready to update my system. My systems can move past that. We can get past that vulnerability. That's kind of the cadence of a lot of this. I know I'm going far afield. We're doing like an Apache lab, and I'm down in apt. But the question over here was, does upgrade my kernel? It will upgrade your kernel if it can. Yeah, I can go here and see if there's a kernel update. Typically for that. So I can do this, and then I might grep. So the kernel package in Ubuntu is called, I think it's just called Linux. It's different in RHEL than it is over here. In RHEL, it's called kernel, so it's real easy. But over here, it's called something else. And you might say, Scott, how would you find it? I would find it like this: dpkg cache L grep kernel. And I could find the kernel real quick. Yeah, see how it's called Linux right here? And the actual kernel is typically, here's all your headers so you can build stuff. Because if you don't have headers, you won't be able to compile things for a specific kernel. Yeah, it should just be, it's typically just, it's just a Linux image right here. Yeah, so there's your kernel image, right? So if I saw back here, if I saw a Linux image, then I would know that I had a new kernel to go to. So, Akshanya, your question is, do I know that I need to go to a new kernel? Yes. Sorry, is the system ready to patch to a new kernel because there's a kernel that exists out in the repositories? Yes. Can I lock my repositories so that I don't upgrade the kernel? Yes. Can I see with, like, there's typically tools like, I have it in one of the other labs, but need restarting. And it's need restarting not found. Do you need, oh, it's needs restarting. So I can say app-y install needs restarting. This is a nice tool for, I like to use this within Ansible because needs restarting. Where is that at? Might be need restarting. Anyways, whatever it is, we could search for it. Right? Does it find it? Needs restarting. Anyways, the point is, if I found it, I would install it, and then I would be able to do needs restarting. It would tell me if the box needed to reboot or not. Did we get another? I definitely appreciate you guys hanging out stuff. No upgrade will upgrade your kernel. Oh, okay. Let's see. Yeah. Upgrade. Well, yeah, if it's in this list, it'll upgrade it. Yeah, for sure. This was just me looking at the things that were there. I don't see kernel up here, though. And then when I searched for it, I didn't see it either. So, but the reason for me pointing this out then is we can all along the steps of the way, we can check these things if we needed to. I would highly advise if you're adminning servers, you have like a dev or a lower or a test environment where you can do this stuff and kick it off. Rebuild a server quickly, get some process to like hit a button and rebuild a server, and then test these things out to see what happens well before it ever goes to a prod environment. And you might say, even if I'm a small thing and even if it's only just me, yes, you can still do generic testing of systems to make sure that you're patching, make sure that you're going to the right versions of things without like, right? We don't have to like be error prone and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay, so. But what were we doing here? We were installing Apache, and then we were checking Apache, making sure that now there's our Apache packages, it's running. We made sure the firewall was on, but it's not doing anything, so it's not blocking us there. And then we say, well, the ultimate test is from another node. Can I just curl and see port 80 a web server? Yeah. And by the way, in this lab, I said curl 80. Do you guys know the default would also just curl the same thing? And maybe I just look for Apache, and it says, yeah, this is a basic Apache page, buddy. It's a default page. Cool. I could grep for default. I spelled default right. There's the default page. Cool. All right. So my system's working. I can connect to it from another node. I can check to see if the system is open on port 80. That's a thing we could do as well if we wanted to. And it says, I connected. I succeeded on port 80, which was TCP HTTP. That's a default connection over there. Cool. Do I see the default web page? I sure did. And now we've set up the first part. Cool. So now the next part, this one gets a little more complex. You've set up a web server, but your team has a requirement to test against 3 different environments. So they want to have a dev, test, and QA. A lot of people want that. It's your own server, so you can modify this as you want. And you're going to set up the directories for different ports. So if I come in on port 8080, I go to dev. If I come in on 8081, I'm going to go to test. And if I come in on 8082, I'm going to go to QA. Now, some of you, if you were watching the other day or did our Ansible stuff, you'll go, hey, hold on. Didn't we do this with Ansible? Yeah, I have a lab that after you do this all manually here, we just go do it in Ansible because it's way easier to do all this stuff in Ansible. In fact, the Ansible lab starts out with, you were so successful that now you have to do it in 20 or like 10 other teams. That's a very common thing, guys. If you get good, I tell people all the time, if you're a Linux engineer, you will get called in on all kinds of other projects. And you know why? Because they know Linux engineers figure stuff out. That's a big part of what we do. We read documentation, we look at error codes. Like if an error code pops up on my screen, I actually read what it says. Did you guys know the average user doesn't do that? I think that's one of the wildest things I've ever heard. But it's 100% true. If any of you guys ever work in the Linux space, you'll know, or in IT space, you know, a user gets a freaking thing like this in their face that says this is about to happen, and they go, I don't know, could be the stars, could be anything. Fuck, and you're like, it literally says right there, you didn't input your username correctly, and they're like, could be that, or it could be demons. I don't know, could be anything. It's definitely something wrong with the system, not me though, right? It's never the picnic problem, right? Does everybody know what the picnic? Everybody knows the PEBCAC problem, right? That's the problem exists between keyboard and chair. But does anybody know the picnic problem? Some of you guys that have been around know my picnic problem. All right. So anyway, so where do we configure this? Yeah, has it demons in the systems? Yeah. All right. So this solution is a little bit long, but we're gonna go look. We're gonna make some directories. These are default directories that exist out there for what's called the document root of a web server. And the document root by default is var www.html. And all we did was a little wildcard expansion to make 3 more directories right here. And if I cd to var www and I do an ls, I will see the 3 that I just made with that one command. Super simple, just a little wildcard expansion. And the one that was already here was HTML. So if I cd to HTML, and here's just a little index.html. If I just go in here, here's that basic default page. And we could modify this default page and make sure that it updates, right? But I don't want to touch any of that. I'm just going to go and I'm going to modify these other nodes. So I need to make these document roots. I need to make the system listen on the right ports. That's all in the lab here. But I've made the directories for the document, or what some people call them web root or doc root. They're kind of interchangeable. Let's go look at what the system calls them, right? Because the system's the most right thing. So we're going to do a VI of etc Apache 2 ports. So down in that directory, etc Apache 2, we see listen. Well, we know it's listening on port 80, but we're going to say YYPPP, and then we're going to add listeners. So we're going to listen on port 8080, 8081, and 8082 with this service. Now, we talked about this, so I can cat that file real quick. Etc Apache ports. There's the file. There's what we added, those 3 lines. Real quick review from earlier. Me updating that file, does that affect the running service, or does it not affect it until we restart the service? Or another way to say it is, do most Linux services in a Linux server environment check their config files while running, or do they only do it on startup? Very important admin. Like, this is a crux thing for Linux admin work, right? Like when does it read what I just did? If I wait 10 minutes, will it read it? Will it immediately start listening on those 3 ports, all other problems aside? Or is it until we have to do that? Oh, you can nest break. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that we can do for sure. Yeah. But it's not going to read that, right? And that's good, because we don't, I'm mucking around with the configs. We don't want it to be doing that when I still have these other things to set up. I just set up listeners, but I don't have the directives to point them to what they're doing yet. So let's go look at that part next, okay? So we come down here. It says now we're going to create a directive for each of those sites. So let's go and look in, before we do it, we're going to go look etc Apache 2 sites-enabled, right? And in this directory, we're going to say there's a default. Okay, I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to say more on just that one. But before I do, I'm going to make the screen just a little more easy to read, because I know that this is gonna blow up the screen. But let me make it just a little smaller. I apologize for this. Okay, that's better. And then look, here's a virtual host directive to listen to anything coming in on port 80. Okay. And here's the end of the host directive down here. And really, there's only 4 things happening in here. All of this is a comment. All that's a comment, and all this is a comment. We could throw all that out. I could delete it all right now, and it wouldn't modify the server in any way. All this is a comment, too. There's only 4 things happening. There's the server admin, if I want to set him. There's the document root, or what I called web root. And there's document root. For the default listener of 80, it's var www.html. We demonstrated that because that was that index file from earlier, right? But you guys just saw me write var www.html underscore dev test QA, right? You guys saw that, right? Everybody's tracking with me. Well, I can set that here that the document root for a different directive is pointing to a different directive in the server. Okay, you guys also, yeah, I'm not making stuff up, right? I show you guys all the time. I don't have any sleeves. I'm not wearing any sleeves. When I do jujitsu, I have sleeves, but I have no sleeves right here. There's nothing up my sleeves. I'm not doing anything magical. It's no trickery, no tomfoolery. I'm building a web server and I'm modifying the way that it works. And it looks complex maybe the first time, but people that have done this are like, oh, Scott's doing web server stuff. It's super simple. You just have to see it the first time. Once you guys see it, I got something in my armpit. Yeah. I got where I was kicked by a horse. Right there. No, I'm just kidding. I don't show my arms off on stream very often, or my tan, right? My tan lines. But anyway, so we can also set an error log, which is good, and a access log. So all this other stuff was just noise, and this directory is able to take any file and read it. So I don't have to work in that directory or in that file. I can make my own file. So when you click this button here, you're going to make a file called testingteam.conf. That's all you're going to do. Yeah, kicked by a horse or a mule, yeah. So what does it say to do? So look, these are real short. And when you look at these, you're going to go, wait, Scott, so you're copying in like the simplest little thing ever. Look at how kind of clean that looks compared to what you were just doing. But it is the 3 directives you need to say port 8080 right here. Let me get that off of there. Port 8080 is going to go to HTML dev. We saw that. HTML test is going to be port 8081, and 8082 is going to be HTML QA. You know what? By the way, since Ubuntu has we can turn on SE Linux in here. I do need to remake this lab and show you guys how to do the SE Linux contexts, because that stumbles people up sometimes too. And there's a really easy way to come in here and just set these all for SE Linux as well if we're running it. So I probably should redo this, make another version of this lab that shows the SE Linux context, because all you got to do is give it the HTTPD context, and then it'll work for your web server to each of these directories you just made. And that'll be a good little security thing to show you guys. So we've got this. Look at it. It's real clean. 8080 right there. It's going to go to dev error log and dev access log, test error log, test access log, QA error log, QA access log in the directory, which is var log, I think Apache 2. We can go look. But all of our stuff is real clean right there. Now, I wrote those for you, but you could go make any of these once you see it one time. You're like, oh, I can go make a whole bunch of those. Cool. All right, so we've got this going. The last step to create this is we get to go make the file. So we're just going to go to an index.html. This is down in real quick. All I did was I go into var www.html underscore dev index.html, and we're going to add in this silly little dev page. This is the simplest HTML that will render. It starts off with HTML. It turns off HTML. It turns on head and title, then turns off title and head, and then it does body dev environment. It's like the simplest thing we could make, right? Escape : WQ, come down. We're going to do a test one. This one is going to be right here for test. You could paste it. You could write it. I mean, like HTML back in the day, you'd write it for practice, but nowadays you can just generate it all over the place. It doesn't even really matter anymore in that context. Like you could probably get an AI to drop you some HTML anytime you wanted for testing. But now we got all that. And I'm going to restart my Apache server. There's going to be one test first. Did it start back up? That's very important. If it starts back up, that's good. And then the other one is it open and listening on all those ports? Sorry, I'm missing chat over here. There's bucket list thing. Yeah, getting a horse. Yeah, getting kicked. Yeah, tricep extensions, bench, all that good stuff. Killer Code is more HA than your home lab, but is only Ubuntu kind of. Yeah, that's true. Just wish they had a couple images to run. Yeah, so I wish. Yeah, I do actually really kind of wish Killer Coda was more on the RHEL side of things. You know, it's funny. The underlying servers are RHEL. I've shown you guys that before, right? Like on one of these boxes, I can say DMI decode. We just do DMI decode, and you can see that the underlying system is all RHEL. Oh, they went up to 9.6. They used to be on like 8.7. Now they're up on 9.6. So they've done all of the hypervisors and moved them forward. That's kind of funny, right? So it's not that we're mapping out their environment. We're just kind of looking at what's going on. Yeah, so it's RHEL under the hood, and then they use KubeVirt. If you guys don't know, they use KubeVirt to stand up these environments. So it's guys, I say all the time, man. I think Killer Code is one of the best free things on the web because you don't have to do anything except just log in and do freaking Linux, right? Like you guys don't have to go build boxes, get Oracle Virtual Machine, download ISOs. You can just be in an environment doing this stuff. It's huge. Actually, said I do the same with any license of agreement signs that drives my partner. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, now I can just go look. I did a little for loop just for fun, and I said, can I check the environment and see all of those pages? And the answer to that is yes. But only after I restarted Apache, and then I can see all that, and then check. It says, look at you, Linux configuration. You created a web server and changed the listeners for different ports and document root locations. So I said, where is the system configured? There's the document root where you would go drop pages. Apache 2 has a bunch of different files. There's the ports.conf to turn on listeners. There's any file you want in sites enabled. They can be individual files, and they can be dropped in there via Ansible. In the Ansible lab, you drop an individual file in for each one, and then you restart the service. Where are the Apache logs? So maybe clear cd to var log Apache. And in here, there's all of my logs. You'll also note that all of those logs have been populated. So if I were to like cat dev access, I would see those curl commands against that port for that system. And then we could actually watch that populate if we wanted to watch this log or tail this log while people were trying to connect, and then see, are we getting good 200 responses back, or are we getting other types of responses back? And are those going in the error log, or are they coming over here? What other types of things are going on in there? And then I said, is there a monitoring solution to verify? That's going to be in the next lab. So we could look at how we would monitor this. Like, is the service up? We could keep track of just if services are on our boxes. That's a thing that we could track and check. There's all kinds of things that we can do. This lab has a sister lab. When I say sister lab, it's a related lab but with a different topic. And that is over on the Ansible labs, and it's the one right here. So you did that by hand. And then you come in here and you deploy the web server environment. I'm just going to link it because I already have another lab open, but if anybody wants this, these are the, this is that same lab that you just did, but now you're doing it with Ansible, because what it says right at the beginning of that lab when I wrote it was, you were so successful that 10 other teams want you to do the same thing. Do you think I want to go do this all over again on 10 different servers? No. My propensity to make a mistake there and do something stupid and to fat finger something and to type something wrong and all that, very, very high. So I want to automate that process with a tool like Ansible so I can just go lay those environments out while I'm watching Netflix on another screen. And you guys often think I'm kidding about that. I know people are like, Scott doesn't really watch that much. I do a whole lot of other stuff while my systems are building things and doing stuff. So it's kind of an important thing to keep track of, is how much you're working versus Netflix time, right? So, all right, so this next one is, we're going to do some monitoring of Linux. We're going to go and look for some tool. We're going to make sure that it's running. And this lab, go ahead and back out of here. Yeah, that's fine. We'll just go over the top of this. If anybody anybody wants to do this one with me, copy link. Monitoring Linux logs. Here is the lab if you want to do it with me. First time here, systems engineer, found this very informative. Thanks. Yeah, hopefully this stuff's useful to you. I mean, I try to build things that'll show people how to do stuff, and we have a whole gamut in our server of sysadmins through systems architects, just the whole gamut there of just people doing IT stuff. Some of us focus more on the system build, some of us focus more on the security. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Mostly I just do this stuff to show you guys about Discord. Discord, and try to get you guys in there. I think we're almost to 4,600 people in there, so that's kind of cool. Mint said, you know the compiling? Yeah, I do. I think this every time you say Netflix. Yeah. Yeah, you just yell compiling whenever people... There's another one that was really funny that I was thinking when you said compiling, it's I'll just put a go-to in there, and then you get hit by the Velociraptor. But compiling, yeah, no matter what's happening, if you're playing ping pong or whatever, you're just yelling compiling. Yeah, I remember that. Because that's how you get away with all kinds of things, yeah. But it's true, man. I mean, if you're doing stuff and you're getting stuff done, you have a lot more time to work on other stuff. So, all right, so this team right here says that you've determined the need to offload and monitor Linux logs in your environment. Okay, that makes sense. I don't want logs on local machines. We've talked about this. I have in the security course, we talk about logs, and I have a whole talk on that, which we won't go into right now, but we want to get logs off of our system in real time. That's always true. You know that Grafana can do that as a visualization tool, so you plan to deploy it on the server as a daemon. All right. Actually, you know what? We are going to talk about that for a second. Let's see what lab is that. Logging is 6, so give me a second here. Give me a second. Linux group, security, 6. Engineering. So this comes from a series that we have over on YouTube on security engineering. I'm just going to pull it up like this so you guys can. Let's make sure it's not getting in anybody's way there. Okay, good. That's annoying. That's annoying. Okay, let me show you guys this real quick. We're going to go over it real quick. But just talking about like okay, security engineering. And down here where I wanted to go was what are logs, right? They're immutable records of actions that occurred or tried to occur in an environment, right? How do we use logs? What are common log elements? What's the structure of a log? And then down here, I talk about like we need to get logs off of servers in real time. It's one of the most important things I can tell you in the systems world. You do not want to wait for a server to come back up to look at its logs. Because what if it went down maliciously? And now you don't get that until you're there. Hey, Robodom, how's it going? And Han Sohai, how's it going? Honestly, without this community and Twitch software dev category, I would not have confidence to go this route. You could do it, Han. I tell you guys all the time, if I'm useful for nothing else, hopefully it's to show you guys that you guys can do this stuff. Because, we always say, you're never useless. You can always be used as a bad example, right? But yeah, I mean, no, you guys can all do this stuff. I tell you guys all the time, like, a big part of this is even wanting to do it. I know a lot of engineers that are just like, ooh, brother, I don't want to do that crap. I don't want to be doing that command line stuff. So, yeah, different people do different stuff. You know what? Actually, I might turn off. I just realized my Twitch chat. Actually, hold on. Maybe I can squish it up like that. Maybe, hold on. Let's move this up just a little. Move that just a little. There we go. That looks better. Yeah. Now chat's popping. You guys can read chat again. I didn't realize it was so low down that you guys couldn't read chat. Let's go look at logs real quick because this is very important. Yeah, I'm at least an anti-pattern. Yeah. Anti-patterns are useful sometimes. Like when you're learning about things, sometimes it's good to hear the warnings. Don't go that route because 60% of people go that route and find themselves stuck and then have to come back and go a different route. And sometimes warnings are valuable along the way, right? So I tell people all the time, man, like everything I've learned in the school of hard knocks is free. If you ask me about it, I'll tell you guys all the crap that I've had, all the bad stuff that's happened over the years and ways that I've found to get around this stuff. So anyways, let's go real quick. If you guys want to dig in on logs, I have a whole recording on this one. It would be Unit 6 of the Security Engineering course. But we have a little bit of review. There's troubleshooting, like why do we use logs? What do I have review at the top there? I don't know. Troubleshooting, security auditing. Oh, yeah, so we review them for this, and then we checkpoint for this, right? Maybe performance monitoring and debugging applications. So these are different ways that we see logs in an environment, right? And then log elements, there's a specific format to logs, which makes them easier to parse. But there's a BSD older version and then a newer IETF syslog version, and you're going to see both of these in the Linux world. You're also going to sometimes see this other one that I threw in there, which is the, not logql, what is it? It's journal D. You're going to see the journal D, journal CTL binary logs as well. So I have a last one that's on that. Logs are always time-stamped. Sometimes they're also dated. Sometimes they're including the year. Not always, though. BSD logs don't include a year. So an ISO 8601 timestamp, which IETF uses, is going to have a time of a year on it. But the BSD syslog does not have a year on it. So when it rolls to a new year, you probably should have those logs separated out so you're not affecting the years. You said which one should take precedence? I might have missed. Are you talking about these? Different systems are going to use different ones. And I'm going to just show you guys the format, and then you're going to find either one. Most Linux systems are still using a BSD one. Most tooling that I see, we'll look at them and you'll say, oh, I recognize those. Logs must be categorized by severity because that makes them easier to parse out. And then you need to get them off your system in real time. So those are all things. So here's a BSD log. So it's got like October 26th of some time, the host name, and then the process and the process ID typically, and then what the short message is. Yeah. So let's go look on like a Linux box. This is my jump box, which should be 9.4, 9.6, right? So Rocky 9.6, and this guy uses. So it's just cat var log security. Var log. What? Messages. Maybe I'm just spelling everything wrong. So what is this one? This one is definitely the older style, right? Because that's that BSD style right there. It's got the date and the time, and then it's got the name of the server and the cron. So that's a BSD style 3164 syslog. That's what this syslog is running. Compare that with, and sometimes it's useful as you're reading through these to look at comparatives. So you compare that to the IETF RFC. So RFC is the technical implementation for us engineers, right? A lot of network guys read RFCs. Some Linux engineers do as well. 5424 IETF syslog, and this is the descriptions here. And it looks more like this. It's got a ISO 8601 timestamp on the front, all the way down to typically at least milliseconds, so thousandths of a second. And then it's typically down to Zulu time or an offset. If there's an offset of time, it'll be there as well. Then the same basic general format, right? A little bit different, but very similar. It's got the server, it's got the process name if it knows it, and then it's the process ID. Okay, so that's the PID, right? Process ID. Very useful in a system to see what was happening if you were keeping those logs, right? PID data, though, kept in /proc is ephemeral. If that's gone and not captured, you'll never see it again. There's no looking back at a proc directory after it's gone unless you have some other way of keeping it captured. Okay, which most of us don't. You just read process information and then you keep like ATOP or different types of SAR logs on stuff of what was going on. But for the most part, we're not like, we're not down all the way at watching system calls all the time unless there was a massive problem and you were really trying to dig in on what was going on inside the system. The Mighty Pong, how's it going? I'm just kind of hanging out, working on stuff, showing you guys. The lab started here, and then so all this stuff is capturing logs. How do you grab a log? You capture it and take it. Log storage and rotation we need to get off. Main thing I wanted to show you guys was this. This was what I was talking about, was you need to get logs off your systems. Our syslog forwarding collection built into all Linux boxes, you should use it. Log aggregation with agents and like a centralized platform. Loki is a centralized agent, and then like Promtail, or we need to get Alloy going. I need to go do some Alloy labs. That is a log aggregation thing that we do in this lab right here that we're on. Then there's message queues with like Kafka or RabbitMQ, and then there's also cloud native services like all of the logging up in your different cloud systems, all the generation of logs off your servers in real time, right? So these are the different common architectures that we see for getting logs off of servers. Every modern Linux implementation has rsyslog of some type, even if it's just sending messages down into the system, and then you can modify that and send that over unsecured UDP or secured TCP, and we have labs that show you how to do both of those, right? Anyways, and then but once I have a log, what do I do with it? And then you go and parse it, all that kind of stuff. Not exactly what we're talking about today, but important. So what we are talking about today is you're going to go build some monitoring. Your team has determined that they need to get logs off the server, and they want to look at them in Grafana. That's what your lab is for today. So you plan to deploy the server as a daemon, so we're going to deploy Grafana on this machine. There's some Grafana docs if you want to go read about them. And there are some packages that are required, so we can install these packages that we need, unless they're already there. Nope, looks like they're already there, so we don't need them anymore, but we'll leave them up there. And we're going to go download the Grafana key from appgrafana.com GPG key. And we're going to save that in our key ring as Grafana key. And then we're going to make a repository, right? We're going to make a repository in Etsy apt sources.list.d called grafana.list that's going to use that key. There's the signed key that we just downloaded. And then we're going to say, go ahead and update the system, reading all that metadata like we did in the other lab, and download Grafana Enterprise in our environment. That's what we're going to do here. Super simple. Just got to be shown it. Once you're shown it, you're like, oh, that's easy. How's it going, Zorgold? Yeah, Zorgold, you've been here the whole time, I think. But yeah, Eklund Monster, hopefully this stuff's useful to you. All the follows. Alex Shellspawn, I like that name. Or Alexis Shellspawn, I like that name. Or Alexis Hellspawn. It's probably more correct. I thought it was Shellspawn, which is also clever in the Linux world. All of those are great names, but thanks for follows. Hopefully this stuff's useful. Again, like the whole reason I do any of this is to get you guys down in the Discord so you guys can hang out and talk with other engineers and stuff. So, okay, that's going to install. And then maybe the first thing I want to do is see, is the package there? So I might do like dpkg -l grep for Grafana. And I see Grafana Enterprise has been installed. I see the version. Maybe I need to keep the version, like, right? Security is going to ask you about packages that have been installed on your system. You need to make sure that you know what's there in your environment, right? And then here's an important question. Is it running, right? Did it turn on automatically, or do we have to do a daemon reload and start the server? Well, that we could see this real quick. We say psef grep for Grafana. I don't see it running. System ctl status Grafana server. I also don't see it running. It hasn't started. So I go to the lab and I start the Grafana server. And then I check the status and I do see it running. But when I go really quickly, I go down real quick in the lab and I check, I don't see it listening yet. Grafana, the first time it comes up, takes 10 seconds or so. If you wait about 10 seconds here, and then you hit this button again, the service has started up, it's turned on the listeners, and now it's listening on port 3000 like it should. So, is it running? What port? Right? And that's 3000, right? So, and then also, once I know that, right, I can look at this. So I see it's ss-ntop Grafana, and then I can say lsof for the port on 3000. What's listening on that port? And it's that Grafana service. That PID is 13,008, 13008, right? And I might need that to see processes and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, Shellspawn would be a super awesome name. That's a good one. Yeah, Mighty Pong, hopefully this stuff's useful to you. Yeah. So the last, what I was saying earlier is the last two streams I kind of talked at a very high level about like getting into Linux. And I said, you need to know how to do all these things, but then you need to put together a resume, and you need to, there was all these other things. But then I was like, well, no, like somebody's going to be like, this guy just talks the talk. He doesn't actually do the Linux. So I decided to come back here and go, oh, for that person who generically said Scott doesn't know anything, probably right, but I can at least show you guys some stuff that I do know, right? And then the stuff here, these are up in the Discord in the notes section, but it's just like things an admin needs to know about a service. And the lab shows you how to configure NFS, and then I say, what did you need to know to really maintain NFS? Then we started Apache. What do you really need to know about Apache if you get a trouble ticket? And then now we're down in monitoring, and the tool that we're using is Grafana and Loki and Promtail. And I'm kind of like, well, what are we doing in here? Like, what port, are we, right? And then how do I see what port we're listening to, right? And then now once that's turned on, I'm going to go look on the web page, and here's Grafana, and it's admin, and the password is admin. So I'm going to go change that. Got to change that password. And the password is going to be something much harder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? And then the password's changed, and now we're in a Grafana dashboard on our server. For you guys doing the lab, that will always point back to your lab environment on port 3000 right there. So we changed the default password. We can go look around in there if we wanted. There's all kinds of Grafana stuff to go look at, but we're in our own little Grafana server. And now we're going to use a log aggregator called Loki. So this is the middle part of this right here. For you guys that have not seen our monitoring in our lab environment, this is how we monitor, and in the home lab here. And this is the thing that we're building here. We've got Grafana built. We're going to build Loki as a storage location, and then we're going to throw logs. We're going to push logs via Promtail agent into Loki. And then we're going to make sure we can see them on Grafana. That's what this lab does. If you wanted to visualize, I'm ingesting logs on a server, pushing them to Loki. Loki is sitting there as an API endpoint. Grafana is grabbing the stuff out of it. That's what we're doing in this lab. Super simple stuff. So anyway, so then we come down here. Let's do the Promtail part. Or Loki part. We're gonna go into Loki. We're gonna make a directory op Loki and go in there, and we're going to make sure that we have the Loki version that we last tested. This is a little bit older version, but that's fine. We unzip it, and now it's just sitting there as an executable on this box, and we can see it as an executable. And we're gonna copy in this basic little config file here, and we can go look at it. And all this thing does is say, turn on Loki and listen on port 3100. So it's just a default little Loki config. And we had to remove this because this was removed in more recent versions. And there's other things that we can turn on, but we're not going to mess with any of those. We're going to copy in a Loki service, and the Loki service is going to be a very simple little start everything up. Oops. Copy in that. And then we're going to make sure that that's running. Let's go look at, we're going to turn it on, make sure it's running, and we're going to go look, and we see Loki running in our environment. Okay, so Loki's there, active, running, and it is going to be configured to just sit there and capture whatever information's coming into it. That's all it's doing. Okay. Yeah, Grafana is a great tool to practice with, and you can at least get some basic practice in here if you needed to in the Killer Coda labs. You can do some simple stuff. In this one, we're not going to do Prometheus in this one, so I don't even know why I have that in there. But we mostly put agents in opt and things that are third-party tools. That's where we tend to put them. So we've done all those things, and now the last thing is we need to get Promtail pushing logs in, and the default places in RHEL are varlog messages and varlog, I thought it was varlog security. Is that not right? I don't know why that didn't work earlier. Oh, varlog secure. God, I'm dumb. So varlog messages, varlog security, but we're not using RHEL, right? We're using Ubuntu, so the default here is varlog authlog, which is security events, and varlog syslog, which are all the rest of the messages in our system. And if you say, well, Scott, where do I configure that? You actually can modify those if you want in etc rsyslog.conf. Your rsyslog.conf actually determines where your system is sending those logs. And if it's not right here, then it's in etc rsyslog.d, and there's a basic little config in here for where all of the things are going. So here's your auth and auth priv are going to authlog. This is the definition of where logs are going in your system, and you can modify it. So, but that's outside the scope of this. There's other labs that kind of make you do that a little bit. What we need to do in this lab is make a directory for the tool Promtail, cd into Promtail, download the version of Promtail that we want. It's an agent that just listens to files and then pushes them into, at this point, it's going to go to an endpoint called Loki that we just built on port 3100. So we're going to copy in an answers file, and look at the little answers file. It's going to scrape varlog syslog and varlog authlog. It's going to name the jobs auth and syslog, and it's going to target from the local host, and it's going to push it to this client, Loki API v1 push. That's the local API that we just set up for Loki, right? So it's a little bit much to start, but let's copy in the service. That's the service that's going to start it. We'll do a daemon reload and start the service, and then go look, and Promtail is running on our box. Cool. So if we just were to back up, we came here, we set up Grafana, we set up Loki, we set up Promtail. They're all running. Promtail is pushing into Loki. Grafana can query those logs and see, and we can see things in this environment we just stood up that are happening in our system. So let's do that real quick. So that's check. And then now we go in, and there's a solution here that shows you to go import this 13639 dashboard. That's a dashboard from the website. You can download it anywhere pretty much. So let's go in over here. And we've got to do two things. The mappings are all here, but I'm going to go through them kind of quick. It says to set up Loki as a data source. So we're going to tell Grafana to read from Loki. And then we're going to give it a dashboard that tells it what to query. Those are the two things we're going to do right here. So we come over here. We go down to, should be connections. And we say add a new connection. And this changes over time, but we need Loki, right? We got a Loki plugin. So let's go into Loki. And we're going to add a new data source. And the data source is our own machine on port. We can actually just use this right here. 127.0.0.1 or localhost on port 3100. We know that because we were just looking at that lab. None of these things apply. We didn't turn on TLS, but in one of my labs, one of these days I need to. This is my favorite thing about Grafana right here. Of all the things that I've built over the years, Grafana has one of the most useful save and test right here, because watch this. If it can read that endpoint, it's going to tell me right there. I hit that endpoint, I read some data, you're good, bro. Now, does that mean all my stuff's going to work? No. That doesn't mean everything's going to work, guys. But does that mean that the most basic communication has happened? It sure does. So that part's done. I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to build a dashboard. And the way I'm going to build a dashboard is by importing a dashboard with that ID number that we found right here. So all we did was build Loki off of our 127.0.0.1 and then import this dashboard. That's all we're doing. Let's go import the dashboard. It's going to load it up. It's going to say, hey, it's we'll call it logs and apps. We can change the name. We could call it Prolog logs and apps if we wanted. We could put in a special folder if we had one. And we want to use that Loki data source that we just set up, which again, we could have changed that name too. And we're going to import it. Now, if that worked, it just shows up here in app, we've got auth and syslog. So syslog is sysloggy things, system stuff. And auth are auth things. And I can make the refresh here every 10 seconds. And now this is where I can come over here and I can go, okay, well, let's test this. If I were to, let's clear the screen real quick on control plane. And let's say user add user one, okay? User add user one went and did something and made a user. And then maybe I wanted to say, well, did that go? So if I grep user one from var log auth log, did that go in there? Yeah, user one showed up in there. Is it showing up over here? Oh, there it is. There's that user add for that new user. I can even back out a little bit so it fits. Oh, there he is. I see his group ID. I see all these other things. Cool. Could I come over here and maybe say for user in backtick sequence maybe 2 to 100 do user add -m user $user, right? Because I'm variable names, right? Sleep 3 done. So I can just sit here and make users, and I'll just sit over here and I'll take my hands off the keyboard, drink a monster here. You guys don't see me touching the screen, don't see me touching anything, but we should see every 10 seconds when that refreshes, right above me there. More users popping up because it's reading that file, pushing it from the Promtail agent out of the log into Loki. Grafana is reading Loki and refreshing every 10 seconds and seeing those actions happen in the system. Now, this is the most basic piece of it. Most basic piece I could show you is this right here. And from a sysadmin standpoint, is there a monitoring tool that is looking at logs? Yes. But is this a full SIEM solution that's doing decisions based on the fact that users were logged? No. It's not thinking in any way. There's no aggregation of this and going, well, I shouldn't really be building, like the user add command should not be adding users locally to machines. This needs to trigger an alert. We don't have any of that yet, right? But the base monitoring pieces have been put in place for us to go and build all the rest of that stuff. Hey, how's it going, Golden Brown? Hopefully this stuff's useful to you. What's the funky circle on the top? So that's my, so if you guys remember Ranger Cam, we used to have a dog named Ranger and he'd be downstairs. I've repurposed Ranger Cam and it just points, it's over here. I'll take a picture of it and put it in the Discord. So that circle up there is a sand art thing that I bought for the wife, and we kept it downstairs all through Christmas time and stuff when family was over and stuff. But then we put it up here, and basically it just sits on top of my fridge and draws stuff all day. And then I just have a little thing that visualizes it. So then when we're hanging out, it's just dragging a little ball over. In fact, if you guys want to see what it originally looked like, I can show you here. Bunch of events. Events are all free in our Discord. You know, you don't pay nothing for them. If we go to Sandbox, this is kind of funny because Sandbox is where we do a bunch of testing and sending stuff into a Discord and lab stuff and all that. But when I got it for the wife, I put Sandbox stuff in the Sandbox. So here's what it originally looked like. This was when we first turned it on, right here. So when we first put it together, it had this purple sand and then this really fine like white sand, and then it wasn't mixed yet at first. And then we slowly, over time, it mixed. So that was what it looked like at first, when it was first kind of running. And it doesn't look very good. It was building like little circle patterns, and then the wife got her app all hooked up. And then now, that was what it looked like when it was building like a little starfish at one point. Then it all got mixed in pretty good. It was, I don't know, I was just drawing something there. And then I messed around, and I had some other ones that it was doing. And then, yeah, this was it, drawing like a little star. She's got some pretty cool little patterns that thing will draw, but it's just up there. Yeah, it's just over there drawing it. And then now I just have the Ranger Cam pointed down on it because I don't know. You guys probably know this if you're a systems engineer or any of these things that look at black backgrounds with white letters or green letters all day. Most of you like to be distracted in some way. So if we like to be distracted, then let me move this up just a little bit. If we like to be distracted in some way, then I'll just put that up there, and then it'll be like squirrel. You guys can just watch that for a little bit. I think it looks like it's drawing. I can't see what it's drawing right there. I can go look at it, and I can see it. I can see it this big. I think it's like 10 inches or something, 10 or 12. So yeah, it's pretty cool little thing. I can make it bigger too. Hold on. Although the resolution on that camera is not super great. Let's see what that thing's doing. Looks like it's drawing. It might be drawing like a little angel or something, or a little butterfly. Yeah, but that's like it just drags, like the magnet underneath it just drags the little metal ball around. And the wife was like, she's like, that's really cool. Like, I'm surprised they have the technology for that. And I was like, wife, look, people can 3D print stuff. So just dragging a ball on a 2D plane, like by dragging a magnet around underneath, I said, that's simple. That's simple compared to like the 3D, printing that we can do and that kind of stuff. So Ranger was pretty fun. Yeah, we did love Ranger. It looks like some kind of wing on something. The kind of funny thing about it is it would be like if you were trying to draw something, but you only had a fat brush to do it, because the only thing it can use to draw is that little ball. So it's like, yeah. Ranger was good. We liked Ranger. He kept everything safe. I'll leave that like that so you guys can. It'll be like happy medium. You guys can see it draw or whatever. But yeah, that's just a little sand art thing that the wife has over there, and I just figured I'll put it up there. It's a nice little distraction. But look at this. It went all the way to the end. It captured all the users. Look, user 100 just finished, and it built all the users, and it captured all of it. So at the end of the day, the most important thing, when you're first building system stuff out is get the logs off the servers. You do not want to have to wait until the server comes back up to see what happened to it. You want to be able to do log analysis while the server's down, while risks are being calculated, and we've maybe moved something into a quarantine and we don't know what the activities of it were, and now we're going to go look at things that happen. We often talk, I've shown you guys this before, but let me show you guys this. So it's attack.miter.org, right? So attackmiter.org. If you guys have never seen this, this is a great little tool to understand what's called the attack kill chain, right? Or the attack matrix for enterprise. And these are the things that people do when they attack your system, right? And attack.miter.org is the site. Super easy. And one of the things people do for defense evasion, very, very common one if you go look through here, is they try to hide what they did, right? So you come down in here and you look a little bit, and you typically find, so these are the things that they're doing for defense evasion. And one of the things that they typically do, let's see if we can find it, is, and some of you guys may have even heard this before, oh, I'll delete all the logs off their server. Well, from the very connection, if we're sending the logs off, like I at least have records of what you did. It might be in pair defenses. I don't see it here. But by the way, if you guys wanted to know like what red teams do, this is the what we call the attack kill chain, or the attack matrix, right? Defense evasion should have, yeah, one of these is yeah, there's all these things they're doing, but one of the things they do is delete logs, but it's not called deleting logs. It's called like hiding. I thought it was obfuscate files or information, but yeah, they'll do all kinds of things to try to hide. Yeah, it might be. Is that it? Indicator removal? That's probably right. Where's it at? Yeah, I think that's right. Yep. Delete artifacts and remove evidence. Well, what if from the very first second that you even connected to my server, even before you dropped a payload or a command, I was sending stuff off in real time? It's not a perfect thing. Everything we do is like a defensive, we've got multiple layers of defense. And if something else is getting compromised, at least there's a record of it. So then we can replay what happened and figure it out and that kind of stuff. So yeah, indicator removal right there. Yeah, so look, removal of these indicators may interfere with event collection, reporting, or processes used to detect intrusion activity. True. But even before I was compromised, I was tracking you trying to get in. I tracked you getting in. I tracked all the way up until you dropped the payload and took over my server. I tracked the commands all the way up until whatever happened, because it was happening in real time. So it's a very, very important thing to kind of understand that, like, yeah, look at all these. Yeah, there's all these different ways to clean things up. Remote data storage, automatically forward events of log servers. Yeah. Always get stuff off your server in real time. Very, very important. It seems like such a small thing. You're like, it was just one part of the tiniest little thing, and I'm like, yeah, but when you need it, you do not want to wait till a server comes back up to go get logs. That's a long time, many years and many late nights of me fixing servers to know that I want to know a piece of information and it's in a log, but the log is on the server, right? Some of you guys have seen that. I know exactly where it is now. I know exactly where it is now. I know exactly which talk it's in, because I've had to show this to you guys a few times. In our Solutions Architect Pro talks, I have a talk that's on ransomware. And I did this was years ago for one of my teams. And I've given this talk to you guys a few times, but it deals with ransomware and things. But hold on, we're not going to do the whole talk right now. But I think this is up in the Discord if anybody needs it. But when we get down to this, what doesn't work against ransomware? The server's crashed. Where's the backup? On the server. That's the stupidest meme, but it's really, I mean, that's a thing people do. The backup's on the server. The server's needed to get to the back. Oh, shoot. We did not think about, if the Bacula server was down, how do we get the backups back? No, now we got to rebuild Bacula and get the database in to even get the backups back up. So there's like there's things that people never even think of. They just think like, oh, I hit a backup button, so I've got like disaster recovery fixed. And you're like, no, no, no. You did like the first 20% of disaster recovery. There's still all this other stuff after. And actually, backing up isn't even the first thing. There's business impact analysis and business continuity plans before you even get to what you should be backing up. So, anyways, the point is that's one of my many. I have so many jokes, guys, and I know they're not funny, but they are hilarious to me. Where's my funny list? Hold on.
Because of the implication.
Because of the implication. All right. So we did this. We built this lab out. We worked through everything. We got the dashboard to work. And it says, look at you learning Linux. You created a log monitoring solution with Grafana, Loki, and Promtail. Now, in modern world, in my world here, Promtail was the last piece over on the left. But I do need to modify this. I probably need to do it in the home lab. This for the first time in a long time, we need to modify this to also be Promtail's the older way. Now the tool is Alloy. Alloy is the tool that, oh, whoops, spelled Alloy wrong. Simplest word in all the world. Spelled it wrong. Promtail agent and Alloy agent to push logs. And then Promtail's been deprecated, so people, if you can't modify it and update it, you really can't keep doing that in the future. So you can't have that be one of your things. Okay, where are we at? So let's back up a second because I know people come in and go, what the hell's this guy doing? What we were doing, what we started with today was, hey, like, what does an admin need to know about starting services? What does an admin need to know? And then we talked through, like, just the simple service NFS. We installed it on a system, and I talked about, like, if you got a trouble ticket about a server, is it installed? Is it running? Where is it configured? What's going on with the service? And just like the kind of things that you need to know how to touch and the buttons you need to know how to push and all that kind of stuff, right? Then we did the same thing with Apache, and we set it up in a special way so that we had like what we would call like a bespoke environment designed specifically for our team with certain ports open and certain document routes and all those kind of things. And we were like, yes, we set up a web server, we connected to it, cool. Then we did monitoring, and from a monitoring standpoint, I said, is the monitoring working? We deployed a monitor, but then we looked at how the flow of data are going to move within that monitor, and then we tested it and made sure everything worked. So what I'm trying to show you guys is it's like, you know, we talk about like the crawl, walk, run methodology. Like the crawl methodology is like I can get into a bash prompt and I can type commands. Cool, I can crawl. And then walking is maybe like, okay, I can walk through a lab and I can like do simple steps and like build a service and like look at the service and that kind of stuff. And then that's crawling. And then running and like being able to maintain a system is like I can go check things and I can validate stuff that I know about how a system state should be. And if I don't know anything about a server, I can find stuff out, right? Like I can be sitting on this server right here and I can know nothing about it, but I can very quickly go, well, I need to move that down a little bit because I made that thing too big. I could very quickly go, well, what is this server kind of doing, right? Like system CTL just by itself even will just list a bunch of units of what's going on inside the system. Or, and that's a whole bunch of stuff, so I go, oh, that's too much to look at. I might say ss-ntulp. What's the system listening to? What's it doing? It's over here a little bit. Make that a little smaller. Right, like what's the system doing? Oh, it's listening, and maybe I just know that, like, okay, so it's definitely listening to things that tells me that it's some type of Kubernetes box. There's Kubernetes going on in here. I may look at it and go very quickly, well, I know that my agents and the things that it should be listening to are, well, we want port 22 up so we can do some basic stuff on it. But I know that we listen to Grafana over here, so Grafana should be port 3000, and it listens to Loki, and that's 3100. So there's 3100. And there's 3000. So I might just do some quick heads up checks of like everything. I may even move that down and say, well, I know what I want. So I look like maybe an egrep -I for, and then maybe I look for, oh, we don't even need the -I. We could just look for 3000, 3100, and maybe 22, right? I don't know. And then that would find us, generally speaking, those numbers. Would it find other numbers? Yeah, like look, it's finding this file descriptors that are unrelated, but it's fine because they're, it doesn't matter. But the point is I could do like a real quick check of things, of what's going on in the system. So what we were doing here was like thinking through things as an administrator and saying, okay, there's just basic commands and there's following stuff, but then there's also like kind of grokking or understanding all of the things around it, right? The next one we would run, the next lab, if we keep going, and the wife should be home soon, so I might get off of here, but I haven't seen anything. Yeah, let's do antivirus. I haven't done the antivirus one in a while. I want to make sure that lab still works. So if any of you guys want to do this lab with me, here it is. I will drop it over here for me and drop it in here for you guys. If you guys haven't seen, man, Killer Code is free. They don't charge you anything. You just have to have basic little ability to get into like a Google prompt. It's Google federated, so they don't charge you nothing. And it says your team has determined they need to run an antivirus program on your servers. This satisfies the PCI DSS requirement that your security team has identified. And the thing right here says install ClamAV. Okay, we should be able to do that. Here's our solution. We're going to make sure that our system, well, it's doing some stuff in the background. We're going to make sure that our system has the updated metadata information, right? So it's read through its repositories and gotten any newer updates and those dependencies and stuff. And then we're going to install ClamAV and ClamAV-daemon. So we're going to get that installed on our system, and it's going to go and it's going to install it. And if we wanted to look when we're done, we can do right here. It says, is it installed? Well, now it is. dpkg-l in a second. Right, here's all the ClamAV stuff that's going on. ClamAV fresh clam, that's how it updates its database, and that's useful. And I say, well, is it running on our system? Systemctl status. And I can do systemctl grep clam as well and see, is there a service running? Oh, it would help if I spelled status right. And I see fresh clam is running, so that is a process that's running on our server. It's also disabled, so if this box rebooted, it wouldn't be on, so that's important to know. I would have to enable it if I wanted it to be persistent. But it's running whatever this fresh clam thing is doing, and it looks like it went and pulled some database information and validated that the database is passed and we're updated and all that kind of stuff as of today's date. So that's good to know, right? It's already updated our database. But I say right here, like some basic commands, see if clam scan is on our system. Is it in our path? User bin clam scan, that's in our path, yep. And which fresh clam is there. So fresh clam will update the database. Clam scan will do clam antivirus scanning. That's just a free tool. By the way, a lot of people don't know this. You know this by going and looking at open source pages. ClamAV is owned by Cisco. You say, are you sure about that? Yep. Go to ClamAV. Here's clamav.net. Cisco. I know nobody was challenging me. I'm just letting you guys know. Like, sometimes you want to know that this stuff's there. Kuya, yeah, you said love my content. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you guys. I would hate to be just here talking when I could be just watching Netflix or doing something else, right? Like I try to show you guys things that I do think will help you get in the field, and I do think will help you do this stuff better if you need to. So I appreciate it. And again, you guys are welcome to always hang out down in the Discord. Most of you guys know I'm there all day anyways, even when I'm doing other stuff. So we've installed ClamAV. Let's go to the next part. You've installed ClamAV, that's Clam Antivirus, in support of your team's PCI DSS directive by security. You know that antivirus works on signatures, so update the signature database and then verify that the scanning engine works properly. Now, we already saw that FreshClam has downloaded this stuff, but let's do the whole process anyways. So I say update your signature database, which is FreshClam, and then scan your system for vulnerabilities. That sounds reasonable, right? Kurtz said that Kurtz said that this is. Wife's texting me. Hold on a second, or calling me. Hey, wifey, you're on stream. What's up?
I'm on my way home. They didn't start till like 7:50. So,
Okay.
I'm on my way home. You're good?
I'm good. I don't need anything.
Okay, love you.
Love you. Bye. All right. Normally I just tell her she's okay, but I didn't want to do that with you guys. I have to say love you back because, as Joe Rogan said. By the way, guys, I'm talking about his comedy specials from long ago. He's like, they hold you hostage. I'm not talking about his podcast. I've literally never listened to his podcast. But I say that as a guy who, I don't want to get into it, but I've known who Joe Rogan was well before everybody else did from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's in circles that I'm in, and I've just never... Anyways, that's neither here nor there. We're going to stop the service. We're going to stop that fresh clam service. So if we go check the status again, it's stopped. It's dead. It's inactive. It's not doing anything, right? And then we're going to do fresh clam to tell the system to go download the new versions if it needs to, right? And here it is, not going, not doing anything. And they've been they're updated to today's version. And by the way, I may need to keep this information for audit later, for legal questions later. If something got compromised and they wanted to know, hey, were we actually following PCI standard all the way up until, yeah, we were updated to the newest version of the database with our, with our subscription through, you can buy a subscription with us or you can use the free and open source version, which is what we're using here. But there are subscriptions. The free and open source version is, I think, a few weeks behind, so you don't get all the most current content. Most companies want to pay and then have that, like enterprise backing or whatever. Most companies go with a tool called CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike's probably the king of this space, even though I don't know how they got away with using like over 1 billion systems on planet Earth as their dev environment and people didn't fire them. But what do I know? It was a week after that. I was sitting in a meeting with the government, and the government was like, "Yeah, we have to have the ability for Nessus to update automatically and for for CrowdStrike." And I was like, "You guys are letting CrowdStrike update in your environment still, like automatically? Like I can't believe that was ever allowed in the first place. Like I have way too much control as an engineer. I just like have to control things as an engineer. But anyways, neither here nor there. We've turned the system back on, turned that service back on, and if we do a system CTL status fresh clam, we'll see that it's fresh clam. What was it? Clam AV. Now it's running, and we see that it's turned back on. We turned it off so that we could run the fresh clam tool. If you run the fresh clam tool while clam AV is running in the background while that thing's running, it'll say, "Yeah, bro, I got you. You don't need to run the tool." So we turned it off so that we could test manually, basically. Right? We just wanted to see what was going on. All right, let's run this kind of long. Actually, this is a really short scan. We're gonna run just against the Etsy directory. Etsy is just flat files. There's about 1,100 of them. And we're going to go throw it in a log that we define varlog clamav.log. And we're going to go ahead and remove anything that we find that's infected. And we're going to do recursive as we do this. So, let's get out of here. Let's run that. And we put the time command in front of it. Time's a little stopwatch. Time is going to give us 3 values when it comes back. It's going to give us the real time, or what we call like the wall clock time, right? That's like time that we exist in, always moving forward. Then there's 2 other types of time. System call time, how much system calls were made against the processor, and how much user space calls were made against the processor. And those values will tell us how much processing power was used during this time as well. I sometimes show you guys that, like, if you just time sleep 10, you'll see 10 seconds passed, but it wasn't doing anything against the processor because the system was just a hold down timer for 10 seconds, right? All right, so this took 38 seconds. It scanned 273 directories and 907 total files, so not very big. And it didn't find anything. There were no... So some of you guys know your types of errors, right? We have a validation that there's no infected files on our system, but this could be a type 1 error. It could be a type 2 error, right? And the different types of errors are like, what's type 1 false positive, type 2 is false negative. This could be errors. This could be wrong. So what I show you guys sometimes here, and I don't think I even have it in the log. I don't think I even have it over here. But there's a file out there, and it is called, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but I can find it real quick on Wikipedia. Let's go find it real quick. So Wikipedia, virus file example. It's the E and PLE. It's called the not EIDBC, EICAR test. That's what it is. So here's the EICAR test file that will always pop up if you put this file as a test string in your environment. Here's the list. Here's this if you guys want it. If anybody's doing this lab with me and just happens to want to do this. This is called the EICAR test file. This right here as a string will always show up as a virus for all modern antivirus. It's called the EICAR test string. So this will validate that our test actually ran and found something. So we will now go put that in a file. So I don't normally make you guys do this in the lab. Like, I think this is just extra. But we'll VI like etc test file, let's say. And in there, I'm just going to right click and paste in that string, escape : WQ. You could put that string in the middle of a file that's just a bunch of text. You can go put that string wherever you want. And if your antivirus is looking correctly and scanning through files, it'll find it. You could probably even just write something that goes and drops that thing places to spot check your environment if you wanted to. That's all Chaos Monkey stuff. That's all over here for some of you guys that want to take... What's that test, Gremlin? Some of you guys want just something to put on your resume. Did you guys know that there's a free test that you can go take? You can go study and take this free cool little certification test, and they'll give you a certification on chaos engineering. And chaos engineering is like site reliability engineering stuff. Plan an experiment, contain the blast radius, and then squash or scale the experiment. And this is all, by the way, in our Discord under like beginner start here. There's a bunch of stuff here like the chaos engineering. And I'm a big fan of all that stuff. I have that cert just for fun. A lot of site reliability engineers that I know that are very good have that. And every now and then just a bunch of guys in our server will go and get that. So I haven't told anybody about that in a while. But I'd say if you ask about that, like in the certification channel, there's probably like 80 of us in our Discord that have that. Just because we wanted to go and test that. Anyways, neither here nor there. I'm going far afield. Let's go back to the point of this. If that worked... This should rescan and find one file. It should automatically remove it for us, and then it should tell us in the log that it did those things. So varlog clam av clams av.log will show us the same output right here and tell us that it did those things. Let's see. Did it find that file? Should be etc test file. Oh, it found one. There it is. It says it removed it because we told it to do something. We want to remove those files. And it took about 35 seconds, which is about what we expected. Okay. I should be able to cat var log clamav clamav.log and see that it removed that file. That's important for me for reporting purposes or, you know, just keeping track of what's been going on. We had a clean scan. We had a failed scan. And well, but it did find the file and it did something with it. So that's cool. We know that our environment is doing the things that it's supposed to do, and the scans are not just reporting out, hey, everything's clear. Any of you guys ever seen there's a really old movie. I know this is a really old movie because I watched this when I was in basic training from the Army. So this movie came out in like, so it would have been either late 99 or early 2000. I think it was late 99. It's called Pitch Black. Anybody here ever seen that? It's the original Riddick movie. Anybody here remember? You guys know who Riddick is, right? The original Riddick movie was called Pitch Black, and it was about this planet where when it goes dark at night, these aliens are just everywhere. Well, don't want to give you too much of a spoiler, but the character, Riddick, can see in the dark, right? It's Gremlin Chaos Engineering right here. I'll link it to you. You can find it in here. And actually, I can go find the exact... Where's their exact... I know that the guys somebody just took this test a few months ago, so I know it still exists. Here's the certification. It's free test. You do have to study for it though, guys. I'm telling you, it's a little bit of a challenge, but I mean, I wouldn't call it like a heavy challenge, but it's something to put on your resume. And in case any of you guys didn't know, yeah, here's my short resume. I do have that on my short resume. This is my you know, my little example resume to show you guys, right? Like my made up generic resume, but it is on my actual resume, my little Gremlin Chaos Engineering cert. Because like guys, it's the scientific process just turned into what would happen if we did this, and then how do we test that on a system. It's actually really, really good tool if you want to get into site reliability engineering. One more thing to put on your resume. If you don't have something like that, it's good to have it on there. All right, so anyway, so we're scanning, we're doing all this stuff. Let's go forward a little bit, and I say you've installed and updated your antivirus. Now it's time to make it run on a schedule. If you pay them for it, you can turn it on with their tool to just run, but we're cheap in our company, so we only have 100 servers, so we're just going to run it. So now we're going to test a script that I put together called answersclampscan.sh, and we're going to run that script daily. So we're just going to put in a cron tab and run it daily. So we're going to make the thing executable, and then we're going to go look at it. It's executable, 755. And then we're going to go look at it, and all it does is say, here it was written by me back in 2019, long ago. And we're just going to log files from ClamAV. There's a couple of values, a daily log file and a log file. This logically, when we look at it, is going to say, this is like a scratch file that's used every day. And this one is a record of what happened each day, always pushed back from the scratch file. It'll make sense in a second, I hope. So we run the scan and we write to the log file, which is our scratch space. Then we copy the log file to the daily file, and then we go and look and gather some data and then print it out. But I want to show you guys, the next day when this runs again, you're going to overwrite this file, and then you're going to place it back on that day's date, the next day's date. So every day when this runs, it'll just keep plopping out a log of that day that just keeps going back in the file. So in that directory, you're just going to have a bunch of everyday back log files as this thing keeps overwriting the file each time. That's all we're doing. Simplest little thing. And then we go and we gather some information and we print it out just so it comes out to the screen. What the report was. We echo out the directories, which were the scan directories from this, and then we go and grab all that information. So that script should work. Oh, I never finished telling you guys why I said pitch black. The movie Pitch Black, he can see in the dark. This was what I wasn't going to spoil for you. The character can see in the dark. Nobody else in the little party can see in the dark. So in one part, they want to go down into this area, but they aren't sure if aliens are in there. So he looks, and the guy goes, "What do you see?" And he goes, "Looks clear." So the guy starts to walk up, and then an alien shoots out and almost kills him. And he goes, "What? You said it was clear?" And he goes, "I didn't say it was clear. I said it looks clear." And the guy goes, "Well, how does it look now?" And he goes, "Looks clear." It's like, this is a great scene. And if you guys don't remember the original Pitch Black and then the Riddick movies, they got a little more absurd as they went. But I loved that one scene because it's like, looks good. It wasn't good. I mean, to me, it looked, with my tools and the things I had, it looked good, right? So it's kind of funny. All right, whatever. I'm losing some of you, but let's run this big clam scan against the entire system, and it's going to take some time. This takes about 8 to 9, maybe 10 minutes. So if I was going to take a break, I would take a break here. But this should not find that etc test file again because that file was cleaned. That file was put in some kind of quarantine directory, so that's no longer active on your system. And then when it's done, we should also be able to go look and see. We'll also get an output from the script of this little printout of how many files did it scan, all that kind of stuff, and then we can make sure that jives with it should jive with the logs because that's where it pulled it all from. But then this is something that I used to use instead of echoing out here in my home lab. I used to write this to, actually, you know what, let's go check this real quick. So I used to write to, I did all these same things that you guys see. This is me. And then you guys see all the things that I just showed you in the lab over there, but with the difference that at the end, I print it out to the screen like I showed you guys for fun, but then I would throw it with curl, just use curl with bash, and I would write it out to my telegraph server. So 8081 and then that, and then if I grep -I etc, what do I need out of hosts? Do I not have? Yeah, I would have to actually change the way that this writes if I wanted to write to 8081. So this writes to my older server, which isn't active anymore in my environment, and I would need to modify this to go to 8082 if I wanted to fix that. But I'm not super worried about that in my home lab. So it's gonna sit there and spin for a while and do some other stuff. But then we'd say, how long does the script take to run? And then we'd go figure out all this information. And then we would come in here and what does an admin want to know about this? Well, an admin wants to know, is it installed? Is it running? Are the signatures updated and correct according to the system? Where is it configured? Well, etc clam AV. Where are the logs, right? We always want to know these things, like where do I go check something? Where do I go check what the output is from the process? And then I say, is there a monitoring solution to verify? We could set this to report to InfluxDB like I just kind of showed you here in my home lab. This is how I would report out to InfluxDB, and then I would just read it out of there in my environment, right? And then could we set it to report out to Loki? I think we could set that to go out to Loki if we wanted to. That might be a little project for me to do in the home lab, and then maybe update this and have this send, instead of just sending this to the screen, we could send that to Loki and then have Loki display that there's no, if a virus ever shows up in our environment, alert through Grafana. That would be a pretty cool little thing to do. Have it come from ClamAV, sent out through Loki through our execution of our script. Loki gets it grabbed by Grafana. Grafana alerts on it, right? Because Grafana can alert on things that it finds through its logql queries, which we're not getting into now. But the point is, we pull that, it passes all the way through. We set up an alert like we do in other labs, and we send it into our Discord with like a webhook. And then, you know, we're over here in, where's Sandbox at? You know, in our Sandbox. There are alerts up here in Sandbox. I think Zorgel's got the most recent alerts in here. But when he was working on, oh, there's my system reboot. That's an alert that comes out of my environment. When something rebooted my environment at, I remember November, yeah, it should be November 4th. My whole environment got rebooted in the home lab. All the XCP-ng boxes rebooted. It was weird. Didn't reboot my Proxmox server, the new Proxmox I had up. But then we'd go up and we would see when people had alerts going on. These are all my monitoring daily, like that the lab's up. Anyways, doesn't really matter that much. But this is going to go and it's going to scan and then it's going to come out. And then we could go and set it up to always run in the environment. So if you guys do that lab, you guys can play with that. The wife's home though, so I got to get off of here. I appreciate you guys coming by. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you. There's a little transition. It looks like it made a little butterfly is what that looks like. But I appreciate you guys coming by. We'll catch back up. I'll probably be back on tomorrow, and we'll keep working through these. The ClamAV one just finishes up pretty easy, so you guys can finish that one. And I'll leave it on the Slurm Workload Manager, which will be our next one that we kind of work through.